see what happens, Larry, when you fuck a stranger in the ass!
Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, everybody? Look, I forgot to unmute my mic. Russell can laugh.
Oh, snap.
You know what that was all about?
It was you this time.
It was me this time. I forgot to tweet out the link that we're live until the very last second, so I had to do everything all at once. Everything, everywhere, all at once, just like the unwatchable.
Yes, just like the movie.
See how I made an error look like a segue? That's called professionalism, right?
That's skills, man. You got mad skills on the mic.
Mad skills on the mic, even when I flub the words, make it sound like I didn't. Yeah, the Oscars.
You know, I live about 10 blocks from the birthplace of rap.
Yeah,
like 10 blocks from Sugar Hill, man.
Yep, indeed.
Yep.
Russell, where are you at? You're St. Nicholas and what? 135, 134th?
I don't know if I should say.
All right, that's probably for the best. Actually,
I've already attracted a stalker. Yeah,
exactly. Right. Fair enough. I'm
you
up
ever
here
go
in the
over your
woods with my
friend's house
family.
to
People
eat,
don't bother me.
And the meal just ain't no good?
Yeah, I see some people saying more face on Keaton now. Yeah, back to the clean-shaven Keaton. And then, don't worry, bearded Keaton will be back. I played Cinderella's father in our high school production of Into the Woods. It's a very, very small role, but I decided to grow a beard for it, and I grew a really thick beard when I was like 16. So I've been able to grow facial hair very, very quickly. One of my talents. But, yep, got the clean-shaven face for you all today here on this Sunday matinee. It is Oscar night tonight. That is why we are on early. It's half that I don't want to compete with the Oscars, but also half that we do have a couple friends coming over. And my wife is working in Albany now. We're down here about an hour and a half south. So she's putting in a lot of time on the road away. And so when we can have a family night, I got to get that family night in. Hopefully the situation changes soon. We are looking at apartments up in Albany tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be relocated
It's
soon.
very strange, man. It's my old college town.
Yes. The hotel we stayed at when we went down the first time to scout places was right across from SUNY Albany. Is that where you went? Did you go to the SUNY one? Because there are like 5 schools there, right? You went to SUNY Albany, right?
Yep.
All righty. So, yeah, we have a full crowd in here today. Thank you guys for showing up. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Very impressive crowd to start the show. It is Oscar night, obviously. I made a reference, the movie, the Everything Everywhere All at Once, all this shit that nobody can understand what's happening. I tried watching it last night. I watched it for a half hour. I turned it off. Unwatchable. Absolutely unwatchable.
That is what frenemy of the show Lauren Steiner said.
Yeah, on and off friend of the show, Lauren Steiner. Yeah, exactly.
She said she made it further than you. She said she watched it for an hour.
Listen, man, I got 2 kids. My personal time is limited. If a movie doesn't hook me within a half hour, I'm out. Not only did this not hook me, it was so awkward. Like, the tone of it was just off. It felt like almost a cartoon. I felt like the way it was written, there was one character in there who's sort of serving as the sort of Ellen Page character in Inception. She was in that movie to communicate what was going on to the audience in case they couldn't follow it. You know what I mean?
Right.
In the case of Inception, I thought it worked because I thought the movie was very clever and well done. In the case of this, it was a mess, an absolute mess. And so it's up for 2 awards that I think, obviously, Russell, you're not invested in it at all, but Michelle Yeoh and Cate Blanchett are neck and neck in the Best Actress race. I know you love Tar, and I like Tar quite a bit. And so I think it would be a travesty if Blanchett loses to this performance. But then also, my favorite movie of the year, The Banshees of Inisherin. Martin McDonagh's up for Best Original Screenplay, and they're talking about this Everything, Everywhere, whatever it is, winning that too. So those are the 2 races that the dissidents are watching tonight, if we're watching any. I'm just going to be hanging out.
You know what I am actually watching, though? Because there is a little chatter that the Oscar voters could rebel and decide to give it to Tom Cruise as kind of a lifetime achievement award, which they will do from time to time with a towering figure like that who's never won. He's never won, actually.
Yeah, no, he's never won an Oscar.
So they might just give that to him. If that does happen, I'm going to read it as a turning point in the woke wars in Hollywood, because I don't think you could read that any other way than partially as an enormous fuck you to the trends in Hollywood over the last few years. Like, if they did do that, I think that would be an element.
I doubt it. I think it's probably going to
I'm not saying they're going to. I'm saying that's how I would read it if that happened.
It'll probably be Brendan Fraser who, for The Whale. The Whale, by the way, shot on sound stages right here in Newburgh, New York, 5 minutes from my house, where they filmed The Whale. And they filmed it pretty much entirely in the sound stages. It's about a reclusive guy who, it's basically a filmed play, basically. But yeah, so those are some things to watch. We hope everybody has fun. We don't want to interfere with the Oscars, and I don't want to miss my Oscar party.
Yeah, I'm going to pull this up. Yeah, Robert, my favorite film of the year. He's right. You know, I have not watched the Oscars. I couldn't tell you the last time. I might watch it for the RRR dance number.
All right, there you go. There you go.
That is one of my favorite things. I was going around India until I realized they didn't appreciate it, saying, "It is not flamenco or tango, my brother. Do you know Desi Nutch?" And then they bust out and then they dance number. It's like the best thing I've ever seen. No, seriously, that dance number on YouTube has 400 million views.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. You know, I was thinking, Lambert, thanks for the chat here, Crash All Over Again. Yeah, I was thinking, what's the worst Best Picture winner in recent memory? Because if Everything Everywhere wins it, I gotta say that pretty much rivals the worst Best Picture in recent memory. It could be Crash. Yeah, I think that's a decent point. I didn't like the King's Speech at all. I thought it was completely boring, but I can't say it was badly done. I just found it personally to be slow and dull.
Can I address one of these?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Oh yeah, and I think Working Girl was maybe the worst Best Picture winner of all time. Hang on, where'd that one go? Where'd this sick fuck go? Who actually said this?
By the way, folks, tip jar is out. Patreon.com/DoDissidents.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Substack.com helps us out quite a bit.
Best movie ever. I spit on your grave. Okay, so listen, it is not often that you're going to hear these words pass my lips. Trigger warning on sexual assault to even discuss this movie. Okay. All right. So I Spit on Your Grave is a really interesting example. If you know the backstory of sometimes the best intentions, or other words, if you're going to go out on a limb like that, you better be a lot more talented than that director was. So he and his daughter, this is during the Escape from New York days in New York City. They came upon a woman in Central Park who had just been raped. And they brought her to the police station, and he was just horrified by the dismissive way that they treated her. And he decided to do this rape revenge movie. And the intention of the movie has the distinction of having the longest rape scene in cinema history. It's like a half an hour long. And if you see this movie, especially in the context of 70s exploitation, you assume that this is just a really sick exploitation film where they're using the revenge angle to justify that, right? You justify it by having her get back at them at the end, but it's really about that. But no, apparently this guy was motivated by these deep social justice feelings, and he wanted this to be a female empowerment movie. And it just goes to show you, man, I mean, unless you're like Stanley Kubrick or Francois Truffaut or Joel and Ethan Cohen, you should probably stay away from subjects like that, even if you have the best of intentions. Because I don't think there's anyone not knowing that backstory who would watch that movie and take away from it that this was a feminist empowerment film.
Yeah. I never saw that one. But yeah, I know they did a remake of it recently as well.
The remake was very toned down. This was
sanitized.
This was the 70s, man. I mean, you could practically make a snuff film in the 70s.
Right. All right, so because we have a packed show, we basically have 5 full segments. We're not doing headlines today. That little Oscar talk was essentially our headlines segment because we have a very, very packed program today. Lots to get to, but we do want to start off with our Sunday Funny because it is, of course, Sunday, and so we are trying to deliver on our promise of homemade original satirical content every Sunday. By the way, what enables us to create as much content as we can is your support. So Patreon, Substack, tip jar is out if you want to throw us a couple bucks on the super chat. It helps us out quite a bit. I just had to reimburse Colin earlier today. I had to kick him the 12 bucks via
you
super
kicked
chat.
it back to him?
I kicked
Cool.
it back for the
Cool.
Vanguard expenditure that he made. So we start out this broadcast in the red, my friends. So let's see if the dissident army can help us out here.
And listen, offer still stands, $50. I got my Tibetan singing bowl right here. You can pay $50 for me to ring it and $49.99 for me not to ring it. Tradition begun by Mr. Weiss.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, gets in right under the wire there.
Yep.
So we're putting this on our Sunday Funny, and like all good humor, there's a kernel of truth in it, right? And the kernel of truth is that we, in all honesty, sincerely do hope that everyone who is in the Washington, D.C. area, or depending on how far you are outside of it and how much you are able to swing this, we hope that you do attend the Peace in Ukraine rally, co-sponsored, of course, by Answer Coalition, the People's Forum, and Code Pink. These were groups that did not feel they could in good conscience endorse the Rage Against the War Machine rally because of the quote-unquote problematic speakers at the events. But I promised when that happened that despite my disagreements with their attitude towards that, I think if we are going to reach out and partner with people we disagree with, that should include these guys as well, right? We have to be fair and consistent. So I do want to say that everybody in and around the D.C. area, everyone who can make it to this rally, please go. It's March 18th at the White House, 1 p.m. They are having sister rallies nationwide, so you can go and check that out at codepink.org. However, we do want you to be informed that because this is the triggered lib version of the anti-war rally, there are some rules and guidelines that we think you ought to abide by in order to make your experience at the rally as pleasant and non-confrontational as possible. So here are 10...
You do not want these people coming for you on Mastodon.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You don't want to get on their bad side. They could cancel you there. So here's 10 rules, suggestions, announcements, guidelines for the woke triggered lib anti-war rally. Number 1, jokes and laughter strictly prohibited. If you want to smile, you may smile, but we strongly suggest that you do it outside of the eye shot of one of the organizers, since you may trigger them by having a good time.
Well,
it's strongly encouraged that you remain
fencing,
solemn and serious.
Right? Once you
I don't
go
know if the
outside
fencing is the...
You can make a joke.
Yeah, maybe there's a designated laughing area. I don't know if they have the budget for that.
There is.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
well, make sure you're in that area then.
Well, they
sure.
they have one of those chalk artists. Just
exactly.
Go in there.
Rule number 2: no Jimmies allowed. If you call yourself Jimmy and you show up at the rally, refer to yourself as James. You don't want to say the word Jimmy at the rally. Now, it is an outdoor rally, so I don't think there are going to be any doors involved, so you shouldn't have to say the word door because it's going to be outside. You should be in the clear on that.
Porta potties.
Yeah, that's true. At the porta potties, yeah. So make sure, just be careful. Absolutely no Jimmies, and if you feel the word door coming on, maybe portal, maybe gateway, entrance, exit, right? There are words you can substitute for door. Again, don't want to trigger anybody by saying the words Jimmy or door at this rally.
Or
Very
you can
important.
use the Spanish version, puerta.
Puerta, yeah, that works too. That works too.
Puerta.
All right, Russell's got these next 3. Here we go.
All right, priority parking for EVs except Teslas, which will be towed at their owner's expense. And that goes for Alyssa Milano, who was crying about turning in her Tesla, about being stuck with this Tesla. So do not bring your Tesla.
Exactly. Now, this next one's a 2-parter, so go ahead.
Straight white male speakers have a 100-word limit. You must spend the remainder of your time listening to the audience. Now, I know this is hard for straight white males, but your time is done, people. You've spoken
You've had 400
enough.
years to speak.
Yeah, now it's time to decolonize your mind, right? And listen. Listen. You need to learn how to listen.
Right. And just understand what we mean by that. You don't say your 100 words and leave the stage. You say your 100 words, you stand up there and you listen.
And
to
you
what's
listen.
going on in the audience.
You listen.
for
Whatever
5
they
minutes. Right.
whatever they might be speaking about, they're
You
speaking
take it
about brands of suntan lotion, whatever. You're a listener.
You're a listener, right? Exactly. And of course, the exception to that, notice there was the asterisk.
That's yes.
There we go.
If you happen to be a neurodivergent speaker, you have unlimited time to speak. No one's going to stop you. No one's going to attempt to shut you down with social cues that you're not going to pick up on anyway. And if you try to leave the event during those speeches, you will be stopped by armed security.
They will force you back into the area.
Yes, you will be listening to people who need to be heard for as long as they need you to listen. Again, listen. It's about listening.
Exactly right. I got these next two. Here's a nice thing that they did for the audience. There's a VIP backstage buffet open to Mastodon members only. So when you go to the tent backstage to do the lunch buffet, you have to bring your phone with you and prove that you have an active Mastodon membership. But that's a nice thing that they did.
That is a nice thing. That's a nice thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just load the app and try to figure out how to use it.
Exactly, right. Exactly. Number 7, Hogwarts Legacy streamers will be denied admission to the event, and we know who you are. I don't know how they know who you are, but don't try and fake it. Apparently, they have a way of sniffing you out if you've streamed the Hogwarts Legacy Harry Potter game online. They're very serious about that. These guys take this stuff very seriously. They're very online, and so just make sure. Look, if you do that, just find a live stream if you really want to watch it. Don't try because they, like I said, they have their ways of knowing who you are.
They have their ways. They're keeping their list. Just like the kulaks were having a really good time. Until the communists came for them, right? Or you have your fun with your Hogwarts Legacy. They're going to be coming to your door with a list later on.
Exactly. Russell, you're up.
They're going to be doing a special workshop, Moo-Moos and Scooters, rioting for the right-sized activist. So if you're going to riot, we want everybody to be involved. We want people of all shapes and sizes to be involved, but there can be clothing issues, mobility issues. So they're gonna be helping out with some fashion tips. And whether you want to do scooters or some people prefer shopping carts with a volunteer pushing you around the riot. So they're gonna work through the different options.
Right. Number 9. This is one Russell knows a lot about, so I'm glad he was around too. I'm glad he caught this because I wouldn't have caught this because I wouldn't have got the reference. But since Russell was in India for a month, he understands this.
The swastika and Azov, Eastern mysticism in Eastern Europe today. So even though this is an anti-war rally, they want to make it clear that Ukraine absolutely positively does not have a Nazi problem. It's in Eastern Europe. So a lot of that Eastern mysticism, which includes the swastikas, I did personally experience. There are swastikas all over the subcontinent. That's what it actually is. But in our Western ignorance, we're accusing them of being Nazis. And they are not Nazis. They are just Eastern mystics. It's the Eastern part of Europe. So they've always had a kind of Eastern religious tradition there.
All right. Excellent. And then finally, this is another nice thing that they did. Drag show after party in DuPont Circle, ages 12 and below. All right.
No one over 12 allowed.
Exactly. So there you have it. By the way, for YouTube and for Code Pink, that was a satirical list. Thank you very much if you enjoyed it. In all seriousness, do attend, if you can, the rally this Saturday. Should be a fun time. All right. Should we get into our first segment of the day?
Because those folks know how to party.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Oh, yes. There was one more actually, Kevin. Yeah. Grow up. We'd like peace, sure, but you got to vote Biden, number 11. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
All right. I'm assuming. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but that could have been a good one there, too. All right. Let's get some super stickers. Abiding 71, thanks for the 99 cents. PMC, thanks for the $2.99. Thank you guys very much for those donations. All right. Now we are into segment number 1 of the day. We had the collapse of the STD Bank. Sorry, the RSV Bank. The USB, the VCR, SVB Bank. SVB, the Silicon Valley Bank, had a collapse. Now, Russell, I want you to explain this for the audience and for myself, because the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank sounds like in a socialist utopia would be a holiday. Sounds like there should be gift exchanges on the day to commemorate the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. So do you want to fill us in on what happened and how? And like I said, I'm here to queue up your exhibits.
Okay, so I don't want to get too complicated here, but I did actually I have somebody who could get fired just for having breathed the same air I've breathed. So I'm not going to give any indication of where they work, but I have somebody with expertise that I talked to get ready for this segment because I didn't completely understand it myself. Okay, so this bank, before the interest rate started to get raised, bought a lot of bonds, and that was kind of their business model, which I mean is relatively safe as long as interest rates don't go up. They bought a lot of bonds at 1.5% interest. Thing is, once you start being able to get a CD, much less a bond, that'll pay over 4% interest, the value of those bonds collapses because there's no demand for them, because people can get better interest. So you can't sell those bonds anymore. So this bank, which really specialized in dealing with founders and venture capital around Silicon Valley, startups, that kind of thing, they announced that they needed to do a capital raise because they were getting into a little trouble with these bonds. And that caused a classic 1930s style run on the bank. A lot of people don't realize this, but the money you have in the bank that's FDIC insured, it's only insured up to $250,000. Beyond that, you're shit out of luck. And apparently, because you're dealing with Silicon Valley and you're dealing with a lot of millionaires and billionaires, 90% of the money they had on deposit is not FDIC insured. So that could cause I don't like to be alarmist because there are constantly people screaming from the rooftops for clickbait. The whole banking system is going to collapse next week. But hey, man, when people with that kind of money lose it all, that can trigger a panic through the financial system. Given how corrupt our government is, I'd be surprised if they let those people lose their money, though. I think in the end, the federal government's going to step in. Yellen said that they wouldn't get bailed out, but I'll believe that when I see it. I'll believe that when the Democrats, donors, and Republicans, for that matter, donors start calling up about how they have to be made whole. But this is this is an example of two kind of running themes that go through a lot of these stories. For one, this bank was as good an example as you could find of woke capitalism, this vision of capitalism that really, we've been mentioning this quite a lot lately, that really comes out of the whole Davos mentality. It's really Davos that spread this idea of using the term systemic change to refer only to identity and to not refer at all to the actual mechanisms of capitalism and how it works, and to channel all efforts to improve society into capitalist-friendly projects like more women entrepreneurs, more people of color with their own businesses, right? They don't want you talking at all about the idea that the system itself might be deeply flawed. So we have a video that's a pretty good example of the kind of mission statement they would put out, even as they were furiously lobbying for less regulation. Do we have that?
We do. We're not going to play the whole thing. That'll
Just
be
a
like
little
the,
bit of it.
Yeah, just a little bit. We'll give it the everything.
Just to give you an
everywhere,
idea.
all at once treatment. We'll watch, the first few minutes, and then we'll spare ourselves the rest.
That's all we can. That's all we can take.
Yeah.
I went through a few phases. I didn't go through the fireman.
I feel like we don't even need to watch anymore. I think like that with the music, that just kind of really says it all. Let's just play this one more time, and then we will let it go a little bit. But that says it all right there.
Yep. Women.
I went through a
technology.
few phases. I didn't go through the fireman phase, but I got quite taken up with being a doctor.
I actually just wanted to save the world. I moved to Africa. I did a lot of work in our inner cities, and I had the opportunity to work for a private equity fund operating out of Zimbabwe when I was.
Oh yeah, you did that to save the world, sure.
Yeah.
They were positions of authority.
That's why she was in Zimbabwe.
They were
doing venture capital.
People, frankly,
That's exactly what they need in
men of
Zimbabwe.
science.
Venture
I think I
capital.
was very ambitious when I was a kid, so I didn't
there.
just want one future. I wanted many different futures. So I was, creative writer was one of them, concert pianist, synchronized swimming,
we're
which
not
was
just
a really big
boring
thing,
bankers.
up in Canada.
Right.
We're
As a child,
dynamic,
I thought I
creative
might be
people.
a famous stage actress. I was in every single play at school. I was
And then
in
my
at a
dreams
boys'
were
school for my
crushed
sixth
under
form,
the
so I got
booze
lots of parts
heel of
because there were no
reality.
girls to play the parts. And then
I
All
got
right, very
tired
good.
of having no money.
We get the point. Right, yeah, exactly. Exactly. I wanted to be an actress, then I realized I can't get rich doing this. Right.
Yeah, there's no money in that. Not everyone can be Kate Blanchett.
Yeah.
But everyone can exploit the poor for their own personal wealth. So that's very typical. I would very much recommend Anand Giridharadas' book, Winners Take All, that really explains the whole ethos that this reflects. Because listen to the things that they're saying. I was working in the inner city. I was trying to help people, right? There's this ethos with these people that they've really talked themselves into. They call it doing good by doing well. In other words, you get rich. It's a very Reagan-esque kind of a vision, right? It's trickle down. Once you have all this money, then you're going to take that money and put it back into society and starting programs for women and inner cities. And this is all rooted in actually Carnegie wrote a treatise basically laying out the philosophical underpinning of this theory of philanthropy. And Carnegie's vision was, yes, I had a right to break unions in my steel mills and have people die in my mines. And now it is my responsibility to give back. But it is society's responsibility to let me make that money so that I can then better society. And of course, what's lost in that vision is democracy. What's lost in that vision is people choosing how they're going to allocate resources for the betterment of their society. It's this very aristocratic vision,
right?
Combined with this very Ayn Rand kind of notion, this American notion of the self-made man and survival of the fittest. And if you've gotten to the top of the heap like that, well, you should determine how people's problems are solved, right? Because who better than the brilliant capitalist entrepreneur, right? That's what all that shit is. That's what all of that connotes. And that's really the purpose of woke capitalism, is to divert the idealism, particularly of young people starting out in their careers, away from social work, away from politics even, and purely into only trying to solve the problems of society through the means of capital, venture capitalists, banking, and investment, and to not think of these problems in any other terms. And SVB exemplified that as well as anything. In fact, what really exemplifies that to me is that video was dropped at the same exact time that their CEO was spending millions of dollars to deregulate banks in their category. After Dodd-Frank, banks that had over 50 billion. Once they had over 50 billion, then they had to be submitted to stress tests and to make sure nothing like this could happen. The bank spent hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying, I think $500 million on lobbying. And they succeeded. They got that raised to $250 billion. Now, at the time of their collapse, they were at $208 billion. So they never had to be submitted to these stress tests. So at the same exact time that they put out that video diverting you to, oh, look what we're doing for women. Lean in, right? Oh, yeah, we're going to make a bunch of Sheryl Sandbergs. At the same exact time, he's creating systemic risk in the economy. And that is the purpose of that video. They want you looking at that, and they don't want you looking at this. Now, another element of this story that's very interesting is, once again, our press, our institutions have failed us, right? You've got another example here of regulatory capture. This guy was elected to the Fed board in San Francisco, which he just resigned from. He sold $3.6 million in stock 3 weeks ago. He didn't know anything about this was coming. And several of these other executives sold stock as well. Now, you wake me up when they get sent to jail. All right. This is the result of not having sent anybody to jail in 2008. If we had sent people to jail, I bet you they wouldn't be like, you know, the bank's about to collapse. Let me sell stock. Right? Because they're so confident that there won't be any consequences for them in this kind of behavior.
Right.
But one of the common themes I think that we speak out against is there is this tone amongst what we are from now on, we'll talk about this later, going to be calling Blue MAGA. We're retiring the term liberal. We're tired of the confusion in the chat, but they're not leftists. They're okay. Blue MAGA. That's where we're going with this from now on. Blue MAGA, there is this argument that the people have just lost their mind. You know, there's no reason for them to have lost faith in institutions. There's no reason for them to be rejecting the opinions and advice of experts. And yet again and again, if you look into all of these financial collapses from 2008, they were pumping up, oh no, the economy's great, get your money into stocks. Right up to the day that the stock market crashed. When you look at how they covered Elizabeth Holmes, when you look at how they covered very recently Sam Bankman-Fried, right? The next JP Morgan, right up to this. So I am singling him out because nobody represents this more than Jim Cramer does. But I want to make it clear, you could look up articles in Forbes that pumped up this bank too. It's not just Jim Cramer. Jim Cramer is just, look, if you want to talk about a white mediocrity who doesn't face any consequences for his obvious failure and lack of skill, Jim Cramer is the best example of that you could find, of somebody who absolutely just fails up and doesn't deserve his position and just incredibly just gets everything wrong. Jim Cramer is so wrong that you will make more money doing the opposite of what Jim Cramer says than doing what he says. And we know that because there is an ETF called the Reverse Cramer, where that's what they do. Whatever Cramer says to do on his show, they do the opposite, always outperforms the market, does very well. Cramer is useful as an indicator of what not to do. So I put together a montage of some of his lowlights over the last few years, right up to SVB.
Rights. Should I be worried about Bear Stearns in terms of liquidity and get my money out of there? No, no, no. Bear Stearns is fine. Do not take your money out. This is really, look, if there's one takeaway other than a plus 400 somebody, Bear Stearns is not in trouble. I mean, if anything, they're more likely to be taken over. Don't move your money from Bear. That's just being silly. Don't be silly.
Bear Stearns today leading the tumble on Wall Street. The stock plunging 45% after the New York Federal Reserve and JP Morgan agreed to provide an emergency financing to the Wall Street firm.
Compare you, I usually don't do this, to Steve Jobs and what he did for computing. I regard you as a visionary, next generation person. Is this the kind of ridiculous pressure that nobody needs?
You know, Steve Jobs was, I don't think there is another Steve Jobs. He was a phenomenal entrepreneur. We've got an incredible opportunity to try to uphold a legacy in Silicon Valley of changing the world. And
disrupting the world.
We're working 24/7 to do it.
Well, I understand that's exactly how you work. That's Elizabeth Holmes. She's the Theranos founder and CEO. Congratulations on all the success you've had, and I sure hope you win.
Well, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
The judge just sentenced Elizabeth Holmes to 11 years, 3 months in prison.
J.P. Morgan of this generation, Sam Bankman-Fried's FTX, is slashing everybody's margin, and average fees per transaction across the industry have declined by 50%. A lot of that is the man, Sam Bankman-Fried.
Embattled FTX co-founder Sam Bankman-Fried has been arrested in the Bahamas. The U.S. Attorney's Office made the announcement on Twitter. The complaint alleged he orchestrated a scheme to defraud investors in his crypto exchange between 2019 and November 2022, when he stepped down as CEO of the company. Prosecutors allege Bankman-Fried raised more than $1 billion from U.S. investors and diverted those funds to his privately owned crypto hedge fund, Alameda Research LLC.
The ninth best performer year to date is SVB Financial. Don't yawn. This company's a merchant bank with a deposit base that Wall Street had been mistakenly concerned about. SVB is the old Silicon Valley Bank. Recently bought one of our favorite research firms, Moffett Nathanson, and it's become less dependent upon private equity and venture capitalists. Wait a second. Those dried up last year. They could come back. Yeah, some of them come back here with the stock directly affects an oversold position. Stock was the fourth worst performer in 2022. I think the fears were not justified, and it's a very compelling situation. Hey, by the way, long-term private equity and venture capital, they're not going away. Being the banker to these immense pools of capital has always been a very good business. Stock's still cheap. Now, you have to remember that a stock that falls 66%, like SVB Financial did last year, it takes it a lot more to recover. After losing 2/3 of your value, you need a 200% gain to get back to even. This is arithmetic. Some people call it geometry. So you could argue SVB's nearly 40% rally this year is barely a drop in the bucket.
It's the second largest bank failure in American history. And federal banking regulators tonight working around the clock to ensure customers of Silicon Valley Bank can at least get access Monday to the maximum $250,000 of their deposits insured by the FDIC. The bank, popular with tech startups and the venture capitalists who invest in them.
I hope we get most of it back, but yeah, it's definitely a concern.
I'm pretty concerned. On a level from 1 to 10, I would say it's 7.
Okay, so that's, and again, that's not just Jim Cramer. That's not just Jim Cramer. Somebody pointed out in the chat, this is true. Forbes last week was rating the best bank to invest in. It's not just Jim Cramer. He's just really stands out because he's just never right. Just constantly wrong about everything. You know, I don't want to alarm anybody. And again, you know, people are always saying the sky is falling. I mean, anytime you look at the financial press, next week the economy is going to collapse because, you know, somebody in China is doing something. You know, that's always there. This one is kind of scary. Like, it's definitely, the kind of thing that could lead to a contagion, very much like what we saw in 2008, where it started with Bear Stearns and it very quickly spread through the financial system. Like, could that happen? Yes, it could. Like, could you see the market totally collapse this week? Sure, absolutely. And a big part of how we got here is because, look, you can pass all the Dodd-Franks that you want. As long as our political system is so corrupted by money, you're not going to be able to maintain it. And Dodd-Frank wasn't even as strong as it needed to be. And they, of course, they used their money to water it down and water it down and water it down until here we are again. How long did that take? Also, I would point out Michael Burry, the Big Short guy, has been calling this for a while now, that we were going to have a total economic meltdown. So this could be the beginning of it, folks, which is not to be construed as financial advice.
There you go. Excellent. All right. Well done. Easy one for me. We got
Whenever I want to cover one of these, Keaton's like, all right, that's all you.
Yeah, it's all you. Yeah, exactly. I was able to follow, you know, the basics of the story over the last 24 hours. I know now they're talking about should they backstop it, should they not backstop it.
That was the same conversation they had with Bear Stearns.
Well, especially since, I mean, whether you can tie this directly to Biden is questionable, but there's no doubt, given Trump's sort of policy, if you will, of trying to push the Fed around, as the Fed's been raising interest rates, Biden's been very hands-off about that. He hasn't tried to stop that in any real way. And so, in that sense, this is somewhat going to be on him if he doesn't backstop it.
Yeah, well, and this was Kramer's take after the fact. That's basically what he does. Unless the pressure gets really high, he just pretends he never said what he said, and just reacts to whatever the next headline is. So what he's saying, which Wall Street in general is going to be looking at, is whether this makes Powell stop for a second, out of fear of really trashing the economy. Does he stop raising interest rates for a second to see how this plays out first?
Of course. I mean, there's an election. I mean, they are going to be on the hook for this to a certain extent in the public's mind, whether you can make the technical case for it or not. All right, let's take a couple of quick super chats, and then we're going to admit our guest for the day. You all know who she is. She's waiting in the green room here. We're going to bring her out in just a second. Chris, yeah, call it Blue MAGA. Yeah, we'll get into that in a moment, but we might have to retire. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. Like, we are going to screw up along the way. But since, a lot of online left viewers tend to dabble in semantics, we don't as much, but we do think that there is a shift in order, which we'll get to in a moment. Thanks for the 199. PMC, Kramer was a Maoist in his youth.
Was he? I don't think so.
I don't think so. It strikes me as perhaps a joke.
Yeah,
or else
it's a joke.
It's very surprising. All right, we're going to bring in our friend for this next segment. You all know who she is. Ellen Jimerson. Ellen, thanks for joining.
Well, thank you for letting me join.
Of course. Yeah, I wish we were talking under happier circumstances because this next segment is quite heavy. But you brought this to my attention a few weeks back, and I promised you we would cover it at one point. I wanted to take the time to research it a bit before we did, but this, of course, refers to the horrific death of Tony Mitchell in an Alabama jail, a man who was brought into custody and later died of hypothermia despite being in custody at an Alabama jailhouse. So do you want to set up who Tony was, how he was apprehended, his treatment at the jail, and what's going on now?
Sure.
And just, by the way, part of the reason you're as interested in the story as you are is because you live in the state of Alabama yourself.
I live in the state of Alabama myself, and I've also had, there was a high-speed police chase, which contributed to the death of my daughter and her boyfriend. So, I've got a dog in the fight.
Right.
So Tony Mitchell showed up at the home of his cousin on January the 12th, I believe it was, this past January 12th. And he was, it had been only 3 months since his cousin had seen him, but when Tony arrived, he didn't recognize him. He had lost 100 pounds between the funeral of his father and the day that he showed up at his cousin's house. He had a history of drug abuse. He had gotten into methamphetamines. He also, so he was down 100 pounds. He was drug addicted, and he also was very obviously mentally ill. He, once his cousin recognized who he was, to try to make a long story short, he began to tell his cousin that he was concerned about the body of his, of a brother of his who had died stillborn years and years ago. And he wanted to get up into the attic of the family home so they could find the baby's body. And he said inside the attic, there were two portals. One went to heaven and one went to hell. And he was wanting to get the baby into heaven. And so his cousin, understood that this was a serious psychotic situation he was in. So he called the sheriff's office to get a wellness check. No one picked up, but the call went over to 911, and they asked him, "Do you want to send us to send an ambulance out?" And he said, "Yes, I think that would be a good idea." But before the ambulance got there, the sheriffs got there, and it was the sheriff himself and his public relations officer, and I think a couple other officers. They got there and they alleged that Tony fired a shot at them, which is not clear whether that actually happened. But then he disappeared into the woods behind their house. So they went into the woods. They were able to apprehend him, capture him, and arrest him and take him into custody. When he came out of the woods, his face was black. His face had been clean as much as it could be when the sheriffs got there, and he ran into the woods. When he came out of the woods, his face was black. His cousin goes over to the sheriff and says, they put him in the car. Why is his face black? And the sheriff said, he apparently spray painted his face black in the seconds or minutes that he was in the woods, because he was preparing to go into the portal to hell. There has been quite a bit of discussion about that on the Justice for Tony Mitchell Facebook group, and they say they don't believe that he spray painted his face black. They believe that the sheriff set off some kind of a flare, which placed, black residue on his face. I suppose that's neither here nor there. But what is important, I think, is that, and sort of reflective of the sheriff's office, is that bringing him out of the woods with his face black, they apparently thought was quite funny. And they, even before I think they got Tony to the Walker County jail, they took a picture of him and put it up on their Facebook page.
Let me just stop you 1 second, because I just want to illustrate this for people. So this is Tony in his natural healthy state. He's about 6'3", 6'4", weighed about 230, 240, which is, a fairly normal, healthy weight, probably a little over, but who isn't, right? So that's him in his healthy state. And then this is the picture that you were talking to me about, that you sent me right before we came on. This is the state in which they apprehended this guy. So here he is, and then here he is when they get him. Wow.
And they saw fit to put that picture up on their Facebook page.
Yep. All right, so they get him into the jail. What happens then?
They get him into the jail, and they left him in the booking cell, which is not intended to keep people long term. They said that they were putting him on a suicide watch, and that being their rationale for taking all his clothes from him. So he was left naked, malnourished, obviously in a psychotic state, in that cell for 2 weeks. He didn't have a cot. He didn't have a blanket. He didn't have a toilet for 2 weeks.
And no clothes for 2 weeks.
And no clothes for 2 weeks. Nothing to sleep on but the cold concrete floor.
And by the way, what you're saying is available. There's a primary source for this, which is the lawsuit, which is a public document now, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Which I read through myself.
I've got it on my Facebook page, and I've got it on my YouTube channel. So about the third day, for reasons that no one has put forth, one of the officers decided to tase him. When they tased him, because of his methamphetamine abuse, his teeth had rotted out. So he used false teeth to chew solid food. Those teeth popped out when he was tased. That was 3 days into a 2-week stay. They never gave him his false teeth back. So on top of everything, they put it in a bag, and on top of everything else, then he couldn't even eat solid food. He was photographed. The security camera footage shows him being taken into the showers and then dragged from the showers, and then dragged back to his cell. At some point, the family alleges that they put Tony in the kitchen's walk-in refrigerator and left him there naked, strapped to a chair for 3 hours. Then they took him out and took him back to his cell, where he stayed for another 5 hours. At which point they decided that he was dying and they wanted to get him to a hospital. They didn't show any urgency whatsoever. They did not call an ambulance. They've got video of them lifting him up. And another thing that happened that delayed him getting to the hospital, once they had made the decision to get him there, and they were just going to put him into the sheriff's SUV.
Yeah, here's a picture of that, by the way.
Yeah.
It's them loading him in to get him into the hospital.
Yeah. And you can see his legs are shackled. Maybe you can see it.
Yeah, you can see it there.
But his hands are not.
Right.
So they had brought another woman in to book her for some offense. And apparently they didn't want the woman to see her. So they dragged him back to his cell until she was booked, or they dragged him somewhere. Anyway, trying to make a really long story a little bit shorter. When he arrived at the jail, at that point, there's a name for it, which any of the nurses or doctors in the chat would know, where as you're dying, you only breathe like 2 to 4 times a minute. And he was 8 something breathing. He gets there, he's barely breathing. They begin to try to resuscitate him, and then they are told that he had been in a freezer. At that point, the doctor took his temperature rectally, and it was 72 degrees Fahrenheit, 22 degrees centigrade. And so the question before the doctor, they tried to resuscitate him. They changed their protocol, what they were going to do to try to save his life. And they needed to know about the hypothermia. And upon his death, the doctor said he had in fact died of hypothermia. And he said, I failed to see how anybody in police custody could have a rectal temperature of 72 degrees.
Right.
Right.
And so now they are filing a lawsuit, obviously, against
His
the sheriff.
family, yeah. It's technically the family, the estate, and they have filed suit. The sheriff has filed basically a rebuttal. And one of the things in their rebuttal was that they questioned whether the doctor knew how to take a rectal temperature, which any of us who have ever had kids, we know how to take a rectal temperature. If that's the best they got. And I do believe people are innocent until proven guilty, but they've got a lot to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of photo and video evidence here. It's just
Well, it's
inexcusable. There is
also
no explanation. Go ahead.
Well, the reason we have that video evidence is because one of the corrections officers had a
Right.
crisis of conscience
Right.
and released the video. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this video.
Right. One of the women officers secured the video, and I think she recorded it on her phone or something and gave it to
Yeah.
the family. And they called her in, the sheriff and his other thugs called her in and dressed her down and confiscated her phone and fired her. So the one person, and of course there were like in the complaint, there are what, 10 or 12 people listed as the defendants, the people being sued, the sheriff, the public relations officer, several other officers, and 2 medical people, a nurse practitioner and a nurse, and none of them did anything about it. Another thing that happened was when they pulled Tony out and then put him back, if I've got the chronology right, and he had been just living in squalor. There was paper, there was all of this stuff. So they get in there, and while he's still lying there, they start sweeping out the trash and mopping around him as he lies dying. Another thing that the video showed, and I think you may have a picture of this, Keaton, is while he's literally lying on the floor, naked and dying, the officers are laughing.
Yeah, this is what I have here. I'm not sure if this is the exact moment that you're talking about, and forgive the size
Yeah,
here.
it is.
Okay,
I mean,
it
you can
is.
see.
You could see barely like his feet in the corner of the screen, and here they are outside the
Yeah.
room.
I mean, he's
and
there.
then-
He's right there at them. You know, they could reach over and touch him.
Right.
And I believe the woman in red is a nurse, because that looks like a pill cart. At any rate, we had all of these people watching this for 2 weeks. Yeah, he thinks it's funny. And you can see Tony there on the floor. You can see the trash. It's just shocking. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this to your attention is not just because it's an horrific tale of prison abuse, but because I think it reflects on the fact that the narrative about people in death, people who die at the hands of police officers, so much of it has been laid at the foundational cause being racism.
Right.
And I think, of course, racism has its place in our discussion about what's going on. And we talk about having diversity training and getting people mental health training. None of this is going to help. I mean, Tony was white, the sheriff was white, the public relations officer was white, the nurses were white. There were 2 members of the sheriff's, 2 officers who were Black, but I wouldn't presume to put racism as a part of it. I think it's just, and I do want to say, this is off subject, but as part of my story, I learned Friday that the man who was driving and who killed my daughter and her boyfriend, he was undocumented, he was drunk, and all the emphasis in the press, which went everywhere, was about him being undocumented and drunk. Nowhere did they emphasize the fact that there was a high-speed police chase, and he had been headed out of town. And I have tried for 13 years to get people to pay attention to the fact that because she was white doesn't mean she wasn't a victim of the police. Well, I found out Friday he died in custody, not in Walker County, but in Elmore County. So that's now three people who have died in Alabama jails in under a month. The problem, as I see it, is the police themselves. I don't think any sort of diversity training. And Felix Ortega was scheduled to get early parole next month with an ankle monitor. And they asked me, what I felt about him getting parole, and basically I didn't think it was up to me to be involved in it, but I said yes. I mean, what further good is served by him staying in prison, especially that he was the one who had been chosen to bear the full brunt of what happened to Tad and Leanna.
Well, that's an amazing thing. I mean, and that gets to the question that I was going to ask you. I didn't know that going into this segment here. But one of the questions that I did want to ask you is, does this have to do with an approach to justice that I kind of laid out a little bit before we went on the air, which is that, as I understand it, and I've always understood sort of politically and practically, the point of incarcerating people is to, yes, serve as a deterrence so that people know that they can't commit crimes, obviously, to serve as containment or to protect the rest of society from a violent person or a person who is a risk to people. Those make sense. I've spoken to prison abolitionists before. I'm not one myself, although I admire where they're coming from and the world they're looking forward to. Absolutely. Yeah. So I take them very seriously. But there seems to be a third form of justice that a lot of people have in their head. And you're obviously a religious person. I'm not. But so that makes me extra curious to get this perspective from you, because there seems to be a third form of justice that a lot of people hold very near and dear to their heart, which is justice as retribution, incarceration as retribution, as vengeance. And does that not lead to an attitude where anything goes? Because I think there's the attitude within these jails and within the legal system more broadly, obviously, as we get into the January 6th thing, our next segment, that once a person crosses a line and acts outside the bounds of the law in a violent or destructive way, that they're fair game. Anything you do to them is fair game. That's clearly the attitude that these people took towards Tony Mitchell. What do you think about that? And what do you think about that as a sort of underlying philosophical cause for a lot of this?
I don't know. When I first heard about this, I compared it to Abu Ghraib. I don't know what happens to people when they get that kind of power over very vulnerable people. Personally, I don't see any value in retribution. I just don't see it. I don't know that comes from having a religious aspect to me. I just see it as, I see what goes on with our police as being intimately related to what we're doing in Ukraine, to Ukraine.
You're right.
To the fact that we have maybe 24,000 migrants who have died at our border because of a federal policy, which nobody has anything to say about. I don't know. I mean, you want to get the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world off the street and keep them off the street.
Sure, of course.
But not even Jeffrey Dahmer deserves to be murdered.
It doesn't matter what a person does.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Well, when I've talked about this a little bit on the show. I've never been to prison, but I've been to jail a lot. And yeah, it's hard to imagine the total loss of autonomy that you experience when you go in there until you experience it. Mm-hmm. You have absolutely no autonomy. If they say go left, you got to go left. If they say go right, you got to go right. That's it. You're a piece of meat. You're an automaton. And if you're in that position, your life is in their hands. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And yes, the way that I heard about this story before you brought it up is predictably, a lot of people who traffic in racial grievance are trying to use this to argue that there's no racial disparity in the justice system. Look, he's a white guy. And okay, I will say that certainly at this particular moment in time, if this story had been about an African American, this would be all you would hear about.
Right.
There would have been marches. So yes, I can say as somebody who comes out of the white underclass that, police abuse is a fact of life if you are poor, period.
Right.
If you're poor, no matter what race you are. Now, I would argue, based not only on my experience, but on statistics, if you're African American, they feel a little bit freer, or maybe even a lot freer to do whatever they want, right? But if you're poor, they pretty much feel that freedom anyway. I would say they're a little more restrained with a poor white person than a poor black person. I would say that. But I think that I would argue if you want to build a social justice movement, and this extends to my vision of building a working class economic social justice movement where we all work together. It's the same thing with this. Like, you're not really helping yourself by saying, well, cops only do this to African Americans. If you want everyone to get invested, make the point, no, they do this to everybody who isn't rich. They do this to everybody that they don't have to worry that someone in their family is politically connected, because what are the odds of the guy who lives in this trailer having some connection to the governor? Right? I mean, that's you. And this is true across the board. This is part of why I speak out so much against identity politics.
Right.
It's not that there's not racial disparity. Of course there is. You have to be insane to argue otherwise. But we have to remember that our real enemy uses identity politics to keep us divided so that we don't get together and look at them.
Right.
And another factor, and I know more about ICE and immigration than I do other aspects of our carceral state and so forth. But, and I don't know where things are now because you have to file freedom of information lawsuits. But I do know that all during the Obama years, the federal government had contracts with for-profit prisons to keep 34,000 immigrant detainees in beds each and every day. That's money. That's capitalism. That's neoliberalism.
Sure.
It's and then they also had quotas to deport 400,000 a year, which is how it added up to 3 million deportations under Obama. I don't know.
All right. Well,
but solidarity.
Sorry, go ahead, Russell. Or sorry, go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I don't see happening is solidarity. I mean, it's very, very difficult. It was a much easier thing to do in Huntsville to get down to have our lone Confederate statue taken down, which there was only one in Huntsville, and it was behind a holly bush that was over. I mean, it wasn't doing any damage. That was just, everybody was all over that.
Right. Right.
But at the same time, I was trying to call attention to the fact that ICE Madison County, the county I live in, cooperates more with ICE detainer requests, which gets people deported, than any other county in Alabama except for Talladega. And that was a non-starter.
This is my overall vision, and this is my overall political argument that I've made on the show since the beginning. It's all of a piece. It's all of it even goes back to the banking story we were just talking about.
Right.
The left used to be dangerous. The left used to be a threat to power because the left's critique of capitalism was systemic.
Right.
We had a class critique. We had class consciousness on the left. They spent a lot of time pushing academics to the front of the line who focused on identity issues and very dense, jargon-oriented concepts of decolonization that cannot possibly be unifying because they're not even comprehensible to the average person. I mean, if you try to read a lot of these treatises, look, I'm not saying the average person on the subway is going to have a laugh reading the Communist Manifesto, but it's accessible if you're reasonably educated, right? But this stuff, I mean, even academics can't get through it. It's just, which is part of the point. It's just dense jargon, which really distinguishes a class signal more than it's really aimed at creating any kind of social justice. And when you look at, we talked about this a little on the show the other day because I watched Gandhi on the way back on the plane.
Right.
And you look at the moral leaders we once had, and you look at the hustlers we have today who get paid $20,000 to make a speech about how racism is incurable. Well, I bet you hope it is. I bet you hope it is.
Yes.
Because that's your bread and butter. That's how you're making your money, right?
Yeah.
Right? You're getting all these corporations to give you don't want that gravy train to end. You don't want to tell them, well, if you do this and that, it's going to resolve the problem. You want to tell them, no, it's irresolvable. So today we have a so-called left. Let me put it that way before I get shouted down in the chat about they're not the left. We have a so-called left that's been completely co-opted by capitalism. It's been completely manipulated by capitalism. And when we look at these kids that we think are ridiculous, you know what? They're idealistic. They're idealistic like every generation of youth has been. But they have the misfortune to have come up in a time when capitalism has completely taken over the tools of communication. They've taken over the emphasis of social justice activism as they are educated in it through academia. And so they're being manipulated into directing their honest, decent desire to create a better world into channels that are no threat to multinational corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's not just the race element of it. It's the othering of other people in general, right? In all sorts of ways, which is a good segue into our next segment. In fact, a very good segue into our next segment. If you want to stick around, Ellen, you're welcome to. In fact, I'd love to get your take on this. Yeah, exactly. The Jacob Chansley stuff. So on March 10th, Elon Musk retweeted a video of Jacob Chansley, the QAnon shaman, telling the January 6th protesters to go home and remain peaceful, adding free Jacob Chansley to his tweet. So we're just going to play a little bit of this video of the tweet that Elon reposted here.
We're going to do as he asks. Respect the landmarks. Respect the Capitol. Let's get out of here, guys. You know what? We're all going to stay at a little panel. He said he saw on his Twitter account. We're going to pull up the tweet. Donald Trump has asked everybody to go home. We're staying. Okay, then stay, motherfucker. I don't give a shit. This is America.
All right, tells everybody, all right, then stay. I don't give a shit. But Donald Trump has asked us to go home. Let's get out of here. Now, Elon Musk's retweeting of that video led, like I said, that last segment flows into this so perfectly because you talk about people who have never seen the inside of a jail cell, people to whom the idea of locking someone in a cage and doing what you will with them is so foreign, right? They have no concept of the kind of stuff that happened to Tony Mitchell.
Some people say things like, well, you shouldn't be able to graduate high school without having worked a minimum wage job. You know, people say things like that. Based on my experience, you shouldn't be able to graduate high school without spending a weekend in jail. If everyone had to spend a weekend in jail to graduate high school, we would get criminal justice reform very quickly.
It's funny you say that. My senior year of high school, I took a forensic science class, and one of our field trips was actually to the Orange County Jail.
Oh,
They actually took us to the jail. Yeah, indeed. I got to stay an extra few days because of something I did there. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway. Matt Binder is who I'm talking about here. He puts out an article. This, like I said, perfect example of what we're talking about here.
You know, we got Ellen here. You know,
no, I'm not gonna. We're not gonna do. You know, listen, we had our fun this week with all of that stuff. You know, we showed the Vanguard boys.
See what happens, Larry, when you fuck a stranger in the ass.
We gave them an education as to what happens when you go down that road. We're not going to do that again. We're going to keep this classy today. Elon Musk's latest project defending the QAnon shaman and his role on January 6th. Free Jacob Chansley, said Musk. This is by Matt Binder. Obviously, we all know Matt Binder, contributor to the Majority Report. He's a regular on there. For the past day, the billionaire CEO of Tesla and SpaceX has taken to Twitter to defend Jacob Chansley, better known as the QAnon shaman. Chansley is one of the more recognizable figures from the storming of the Capitol on January 6th, where he and thousands of others attempted to overturn the presidential election and declare Trump the winner. Free Jacob Chansley, Musk tweeted on Friday about the right-wing conspiracy theorists who joined the pro-Trump mob in breaking into the Capitol building. Like I said, these are all terms. This is all about the otherization of other people. A right-wing conspiracy theorist who did this. Yep. Musk included a video in his post showing Chansley in his now infamous QAnon shaman getup, including face paint, blah, blah, blah. Chansley announces that he's going to abide by Trump's request in the clip. We saw that. In another tweet, Musk shared an additional clip aired on Fox News' Tucker Carlson tonight that shows Chansley following Capitol police as he enters the Senate floor. Pardon me. Chansley got 4 years in prison for a non-violent police-escorted tour, Musk said in the tweet, repeating the same language that the Fox News host used in the clip. Dave Chappelle was violently assaulted on stage by a guy with a knife. That guy got $3,000 fine and no jail time. Musk continued his defense of Chansley in replies to other Twitter users. Chansley was falsely portrayed in the media as a violent criminal who tried to overthrow the state and who urged others to commit violence, tweeted Musk. But here he is urging people to be peaceful and go home. Talks about, obviously, the cops opening the door on camera. Then he goes on, Binder, to write, Musk's recent statements about J6 come after Republicans who now control the House provided hours of previously unseen security camera footage to Fox News' Tucker Carlson. The host has been running multiple segments in this past week showing cherry-picked footage of moments where the pro-Trump mob, who broke down doors and windows to enter the Capitol that day, were shuffling around inside the building and not actively acting out violently in the moment. However, like Carlson, Musk has misportrayed what went on to his audience of more than 130 million Twitter followers. Much of what is seen is footage that has been previously portrayed via clips taken from those inside the building and has been publicly available. Of course, not publicly showcased in the January 6th hearings, but publicly available. Theoretically, if you wanted to go find them, you could have found them. Just wasn't part of the footage that was cherry-picked by the investigative panel. While Chansley's eccentric costume certainly shaped the media coverage around him, he was one of the first to enter the building that day. In a video shown at his trial, here again, slippery language, Chansley can be seen with the group breaking windows. Not that he broke the windows. Seen with the group breaking windows. He is also visible entering through one of the doors that were broken into. Chansley left behind a threatening letter for the then Vice President Pence at the Capitol building. Just a quick note about that threatening letter here. If we can, I will have to do a separate screen share for this, but here's something here. The threatening letter that he left. QAnon shaman's note to Pence cited as evidence of assassination plot before prosecutors walked back the claim. The threatening letter supposedly was, it's only a matter of time. Justice is coming. Now, of course, you talk about politicians getting hate mail. Every time Eric Swalwell gets a piece of hate mail, he tweets it out.
Oh, yeah.
Violent threats are a norm with hate mail. Not everybody who sends you an angry email gets 4 years in the can for it. So I think the threatening letter, like I said, even the prosecution eventually thought that that was too much for them to make a real sticking point out of. But anyway, we'll read on here. It's almost done. This isn't far. As for the unseen video of Chansley telling rioters to go home at the behest of Trump, that too has been accessible online. In fact, just 1 month after the storming of the Capitol, Representative Diana DeGette entered footage of Chansley's reading of Trump's tweet into the congressional record in order to show that then President Trump was able to control the mob and could have ended the riots earlier if he chose to. Almost done, like I said. Additional footage of Chansley reciting Trump's tweet was played last summer at the J6 hearing. This moment was also captured in the final report from the J6 committee. Chansley eventually pled guilty in November 2021 to 1 count of obstruction of an official proceeding, a felony punishable by up to 5 years. The man known as the QAnon shaman is currently serving a 41-month sentence. Also, contrary to Musk's claim, the man who attempted to stab comedian Dave Chappelle was sentenced to jail for 270 days. Now, that is considered an own on Elon Musk. And yeah, sure, Elon Musk got that wrong. Elon Musk is a loudmouth who gets a lot of things wrong. It's incredible to me that you would enter that piece of information as an own. Because what did he say there? The guy who rushed the stage with a knife and attempted to stab a comedian on stage got 9 months in jail. Whereas this guy who attacked no one that day is now doing 4 years.
But Chappelle is a transphobic comedian.
Well, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. You just otherize other people to the point where they are fair game. And here, I'll read this last thing here. Chansley eventually pled guilty in November 2021 to 1 count of obstruction of an official proceeding, a felony punishable by up to 5 years. Got that. Sorry about that. Musk eventually agreed, yeah, I agree he should get non-zero punishment, but 4 years in prison is too much for a non-violent crime, Musk tweeted in response to another user. But as of Saturday morning, he was back on board with his original statements. Let him out, said Musk. This shaman muffin guardian is obviously not going to overthrow the state. Notice, this is what I really took issue with, okay? This is what I keep taking issue with these guys. And I actually tweeted this out at Matt Binder, because when he tweeted out this article, he didn't get that many replies to it, but one of them was mine, and I simply asked here, should he be in jail for 4 years? A diagnosed schizophrenic who harmed no one that day and was led around by police while in the building. Do you have the guts to at least answer that question? I don't think that is too much to ask. And if you're going to write an article about that, maybe you want to take a position on that. They won't take a position on that. He has not answered that. He did not address that in his article. Isn't that the bottom line here? Or is the bottom line you want to get an own against Elon Musk because you don't like the Capitol rioters and Jacob Chansley, right? These people will not say, because they are ostensibly liberals, right? They're good, compassionate liberals, right? In theory, they are against the carceral state. Therefore, they do not have the guts to just come out and say, nobody has the guts to come out and say, none of the actually like prominent ones who have careers to maintain and public images to maintain as liberals, right? You'll see a lot of people with social media handles will just mouth off and say, he should have got more, right? We've seen that all the time. None of these people of prominence will just come out and admit that they want the guy rotting in jail for 4 years. None of them have the guts to just come out and say that, but they all do. They all do, which is why, as Russell teased earlier, I think it's time to start retiring the lib moniker and the shit lib moniker, because these people are, in the truest sense of the word, blue MAGA. They are partisan Democrat fascists, just as a lot of the Trump people, not all, perhaps not even most, are partisan Trump fascist or partisan Republican fascist. If you believe a mentally ill man should be rotting in a prison cell for a nonviolent offense, you are a fascist. You are not a liberal at that point. You have no claim to, forget about being a left, you have no claim to liberalism at that point. And the fact that these people do not have the guts to come out and say it is just horrible. It's the same thing with the censorship, which is going to be our next couple of segments. Nobody has the guts to come out and say, we like censorship. We want corporations and the government to censor people. They smear people who call it out. They insinuate that they're protecting against foreign. Nobody has the guts to just come out and articulate their position. Anyway, I'll toss to you guys.
Well, they also don't have the guts or the interest to actually look at that footage that was released, or to inquire about what actually happened. They want to believe that there was this planned a coup d'etat, which is
insurrection.
a silly way to phrase it.
Well,
And they want to believe it.
Well, that's it. It's they don't have politics. They have marching orders, and they have narratives that they've been told are part of the cultural signaling that they are to put out if they're to maintain their class status in good standing. Because I know very, very few people who are working class people who have these kinds of politics. Everybody I know have these kind of politics have at the very least a college education. And it's mostly, it's wannabe elites. It's people who imbibe elite opinions through elite media, and they convince themselves that they're one of them by parroting those opinions. And that's why there's no logic to it. And that's why you can just memory hole whatever the story was yesterday and give them a new one. Because it's not actually about trying to arrive at some kind of an objective truth. Anyone interested in the truth got off the train when the Mueller report came out at the very latest. You know, if you're staying on this. And there were some people who like woke up when the Mueller report came out and realized, wow, I've been manipulated into obsessing on this bullshit for years now. People who stayed on the train, I mean, now you're down to the dumbest of the dumb, the insecurest of the insecure, the weakest of the weak. I mean, that's what I see when I look at these people who parrot these narratives. I just see really weak-minded, insecure people who don't really have the courage to form their own opinions.
Yeah, and it's also, people talk about law and order, and they don't want law and order. They want what they've got. And here's another story that Al and I have been talking about this past couple of weeks too. There was, speaking of elites, there is an elite basketball player. He's on the University of Alabama basketball team. He got a call from another member of the basketball team saying, I need a gun. The one who was called went and got a gun, put it in the back seat of the other guy's car, told him he had gotten the gun, told him it was loaded, and that it was in the back seat of his car. The guy who called him goes and gets the gun, shoots his girlfriend in the face and kills her. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out it was somebody. Oh, this was like 2:00 in the morning. Somebody calls you up angry at 2:00 in the morning, and says he needs a loaded gun, and you give it to him. Is this guy, is the basketball player in jail? No, he's still playing basketball.
Right.
So, I mean, it's, and I live in a law and order state, but you don't want to mess with University of Alabama players, football or basketball.
Sports, yeah, no. I mean, the football team's
Sports
obviously the
are
world
religion.
famous team, yeah, obviously. But yeah, no, indeed.
I'm not sure that was actually germane, but
No, that's okay. No problem. No problem whatsoever. I'm gonna read some super
Well-
chats for
well,
you, Alan,
with,
because they're directed at you in just a second. But Russell, go ahead.
I mean, it's actually a third testicle is a common mutation, but Matt Binder is the only person I'm aware of for whom the third testicle is his face.
This guy warned me not to go lowbrow, and then he sneaks in a dig at the end right before the buzzer. Speaking of basketball, Chris Ryan.
I am sorry. Look at Matt Binder. Okay, there was an old sketch comedy movie called The Groove Tube, where they did a whole bit with a talking penis. I swear to God, that is what I see every time I see Matt Binder. He looks
right.
exactly like that.
You made your point. All right. Chris says, hi, Ellen. So sorry to hear about your daughter. I live in Alabama, too. Oh, Chris is in Alabama as well. Thank you for bringing the Tony Mitchell jail death story to Due Dissonance. Yeah, no, I echo that, of course. Thank you. Chris also says, keep up the great work. Thank you for the $1.99.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. And James, take my former Vanguard money. Oh, did you unsubscribe from those guys? Oh, boy. We hit him right in the wallet, I guess. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we got a tweet about that, too.
Yeah, we did get a tweet about someone who was going to transfer their Patreon dollars from them to us. I mean, you know, I feel a little bad about that. I don't know what the rent is like in Kansas City halfway houses, but I hope they don't struggle too hard.
Well, now I'm going to start sending my child support.
Yeah, there you go. Go make up for it.
Go make up for it.
Exactly. All right. Well, Ellen, thank you so much for joining us.
There's another one there.
Oh, yeah, no, I know we didn't.
Yeah. All right.
We still have some more. Here we go. Virtuoso, thank you for the $10. I had a Twitter dispute with a user concerned about the safety of Mike Pence since he heard the protesters screaming, and I had the urge to reply, and yeah, right. Yeah. There was a lot of dark humor to enjoy about all that. I mean, come on, it's just the guys dressed as Haggard the Horrible with the megaphone. I mean, come on. People still say rioters were going to hang Pence when the gallows are flimsy prop about 4 feet. Look, and Robert, thank you very much. I lost it. I put it on the screen, and then Russell made his dick and ball joke, and then I took it off, and now I can't find it anymore. But look, man, somebody said, sedition is a federal crime. There were federal crimes committed that day. Look, first of all, people who actually assaulted officers. Yeah, of course. Look, I'm not saying that people who commit crimes should not face consequences for those crimes, but the sentencing has to be proportionate to what's going on. And as I got into this on last show, I hung out at Occupy Wall Street a lot. There were skirmishes with the police, not often, but they weren't rare either, right? It wasn't a rare thing to see a guy, jump on a cop car and start ranting, and the cops try and wrestle him off, and he resists. If a police officer wants to book that guy and charge that guy with assaulting him, he could. Talk about federal crimes. We're not going to torture this point here, but I just do want to make this point. This is Minneapolis's 3rd precinct after the George Floyd murder. Did the government look not only into all these people in this photo, but did they put out a request? If you know anybody who was here when this was going on, we want you to contact the FBI because we're going to sniff them out. That's what they did to the January 6th people.
And this is the crazy irony.
Case. And so
Trump was president. The Republicans were in charge.
Right.
And they didn't do what the Democrats did. I mean, in conjunction with like Liz Cheney and other establishment Republicans,
right,
to the January 6th rioters.
Right.
Like Trump could have. He definitely, the Patriot Act definitely gave him the power to lock those people up as domestic terrorists.
With all of these questions, there is a thing that we've all heard of called prosecutorial discretion. You exercise discretion in these cases because sometimes in cases where an event gets out of control, whether it is a riot outside of the police station in Minnesota or whether it is outside of the Capitol, you have to take into consideration the context of the event because otherwise you'd have half the fucking population in jail, right? They can get anybody they want on almost anything they want. And the question is, should you? And so to Chris, I think your name was, again, I just challenge everybody not to hide behind, well, that's a federal crime and the minimum sentence is this or what. Just say, should a diagnosed schizophrenic who committed no violent offense against anyone be rotting into jail for 4 years? Yes
That's a long time,
or no? Yes or no? That's the question that none of these people are willing to answer. Some of the die-hard, like K-Hive Twitter Democrat partisans will answer because they have nothing to lose. They're not public personalities. I haven't heard one public personality come out and say emphatically, yes, he deserves to be locked up for this period of time.
That kind of behavior is very typical behavior of an out-of-touch aristocracy that's losing its grip on control, terrified of what the consequences of losing that control will be. This is what you see as as an authoritarian state loses its power. They get increasingly draconian in their enforcement of quote unquote justice.
Right. Exactly. All right. PMC, like I said, thank you for the $4.99. We can't put up super chats that are going to get us, in the back of a cop car. So I can't. I'm sorry, I can't put that one up. How's this? I'll post your next free chat to make it up to you. Okay, how about that? I'll keep my eye out.
I had to go back and see what he said.
Yeah, I mean, we can't. It's not like you give us $1, we can put anything up here, right? So I'll post your next free chat.
We've put a lot of work into getting this far, man.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But thank you. All right, we're gonna let Ellen go. Ellen, thank you so much for bringing this to us. Thank you so much for coming on. It's always great to talk to you.
Thank you for giving the story attention.
Of course. I'm sorry it took longer than it should have. We just, obviously, with Russell being away, I wanted to make sure we could all research it properly before we did it, and I didn't want to do it.
It's all good.
So, all right. Thank you, Ellen. Really appreciate it. You're welcome to hang out and watch the rest in the green room there. Help yourself to the mini bar. All right.
The Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, exactly. Dunkin' Donuts. All right, Ellen. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
All righty.
Bye, Joe.
All right. Ellen Jimerson, everybody, and I want Ellen to send me the Facebook link to the group, and we'll post that in the description of the video afterwards. All right, as we go from police abuse to censorship, we're a little bit late covering this, but we didn't want to rush this out and do this half-assed. So we want to cover Matt Taibbi versus Debbie Wasserman Schultz at his hearing. On Thursday, Matt Taibbi appeared before the House Select Subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government, along with Twitter Files co-reporter Michael Schellenberger. Pardon me. Liberals, and to their great shame, many leftists, are celebrating the following clip in which they claim that Debbie Wasserman Schultz exposed or owned Matt Taibbi for his lack of integrity. So we're going to play this. Russell and I did not do a dry run of this. We didn't rehearse this. So, Russell, if you have anything to say, just start talking and I'll stop. But we're going to kind of stop and start. It's only about 3 minutes, but here we go.
Of your objectivity.
Sorry.
Mr. Taibbi, I want to ask about journalistic ethics and information sources. The Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics asserts that journalists should avoid political activities that can compromise integrity or credibility. Being a Republican witness today certainly casts a cloud over your objectivity. But
what? First of all, straight up, what? He was called before the committee to testify. He appeared before the committee to testify. The fact that he was called by a Republican calls into question his objectivity. I don't understand that. I mean, if he was chomping at the bit to come, then maybe. If he was calling Jim Jordan 4 times a day, begging him to be chosen to come speak, then maybe you'd have a point there. But as I understand, what she said was, you are a witness being called by the Republicans, which undermines your objectivity. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, Wasserman Schultz represents really everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party. She's deeply corrupt. This is somebody who's so shameless. She got fired as the DNC chair for rigging the primaries. And she's going to sit up there and question Matt Taibbi's integrity. And as we'll show, she has no love of the Capitol Police when it was inconvenient for her. I think people have forgotten about that story at this point.
I did. I didn't remember it until you reminded me today.
She has repeatedly come out against marijuana legalization. One of her biggest donors, strangely, is a liquor lobby.
Oh, interesting.
And she's always coming. Until the Democratic Party in Florida decided not to take private prison money anymore, she was one of the biggest recipients of private prison money. So she just absolutely no ethics. And you watch the tack that she takes here. It's really the McCarthy hearings, and that was not just her. That was kind of a running theme. But she particularly dug in with innuendo and insinuation, and of all people to take that tack, somebody who got fired by the deeply corrupt DNC for being too corrupt.
Right.
You're going to
too
sit
clumsy
here
in her corruption to survive it. Yeah.
Right. You're going to sit here and talk about his compromised integrity. I mean, she's such a disgusting pig. I honestly, I don't know how you could sit there and not call her that. Like, I'd wind up in contempt of Congress, man. Like, my hat's off to these guys, man. Like, I don't know how you don't say you are a corrupt little pig. How do you not say that to her as she's conducting herself this way?
I tweeted a similar thing at him for that exact reason. All right, let's hear more.
Deeper concern that I have relates to the ethics of how journalists receive and present certain information. Journalists should avoid accepting spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion. Would you agree with that?
I think it depends.
Really? You wouldn't agree that a journalist should avoid spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion?
Congresswoman, I've done probably a dozen stories involving whistleblowers. Every reported story that I've ever done across 3 decades involves sources who have motives. Every time you do a story, you're making a balancing test between the public interest.
Reclaiming my time. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So this is a central question of this whole thing here. One of the central questions of this whole debate is Elon Musk a whistleblower or is he not? Because the libs, the blue MAGA fascists,
yes.
Do not consider Elon Musk a whistleblower because in their very sort of third grade understanding of power, they feel like, well, he can't possibly be considered a whistleblower because he's now the second richest man on earth. So Elon therefore represents institutional power. And because he represents institutional power, he cannot be seen as a whistleblower exposing the corruption of institutional power. And I would just have to push back on that. Say, like, yes, obviously he's the second richest man on earth, and obviously he is more powerful than the average Joe because of that. But when we talk about institutional power, you're not just talking about individual net worth. You're talking about the extent to which these rich men can integrate themselves into systems and institutions that wield tremendous power. No doubt Elon could do that if he wanted to, but he really hasn't. If he did, there would be no Twitter files, right? If he did, he would have played ball, and none of this would have been coming out. And so that's just a misunderstanding of theirs. I think Wasserman Schultz is probably smart enough to know that. She just plays the game because she's a good, lapdog, right? A good stooge. But I think a lot of even the more well-meaning of the blue MAGA people don't understand that. They just can't see Elon Musk as a whistleblower type because he's rich.
Well, it's ironic that this is centering on Matt Taibbi because Matt Taibbi has written so extensively about how their tactic with anyone who challenges their narratives is what he calls to throw the ick on them.
Right.
And that's what they're furiously trying to do with Musk. For us who are civil libertarians, Musk does pose a complicated situation. I mean, I think where we're coming from in terms of economics, don't think someone like Elon Musk should really exist. We don't.
Oh, no. Not as a multi-billionaire, no.
Not as a multi-billionaire. And he's an asshole. This is a guy who started making cracks about the Thai divers being pedophiles and just, crazy. He's an asshole. He's a total asshole. That's not the question. They're all assholes. Bezos is an asshole. Bill Gates I think he should be in prison for the way that he propagandized to defend the IP of the pharmaceutical companies during COVID.
Right.
So you've got an asshole among assholes who decides to challenge the assholes.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So who am I supposed to side with? That asshole or the other assholes? I'm going to side with the asshole that, at least in these particular battles, I seem to have common interests with.
Well, exactly.
For whatever reason, Musk has decided to make his own life really difficult. Because if you're Elon Musk, all you need to do is shut the fuck up and not ask any questions. And, oh, Elon, he's saving the world. That's how they talked about him until 5 minutes ago, right?
Right, exactly.
And then once he turned around
right,
and started challenging their narratives, now he became the Antichrist. And, if they really cared about the conduct of people like Elon Musk, they'd be looking at Jeff Bezos, who has much more systemic impact on our society via his control of the Washington Post than Elon Musk does.
And this is the question that Taibbi raised there. He says, look, every time you have a whistleblower come to you with information, they always have an axe to grind.
Right.
There wouldn't be
Right.
whistleblowers if
Right.
they didn't have an axe to
Right.
grind. They don't risk everything for no fucking
Right.
reason. They do it because they're pissed about something and they want to air it out. So, of course, they have a motivation. And yes, as Matt said there, you have to parse, okay, to what extent is their motivation influencing this in a way that could be deceptive or manipulative? That's why you have to vet the information and ultimately decide to run with it or not run with it based on how true it is and how relevant it is to the story you want to tell. All right, so here we go. Let's play more.
I ask you this because before you became Elon Musk's hand-picked journalist, and pardon the oxymoron,
It's not an
you stated
oxymoron.
this
You're a fucking moron. That's not an That's not an oxymoron.
on Joe Rogan's podcast about being spoon-fed information, and I quote, I think that's true of any kind of journalism, and you'll see it behind me here. I think that's true of any kind of journalism. Once you start getting handed things, then you've lost. They have you at that point, and you got to get out of that habit. You just can't cross that line. Do you still believe what you told Mr. Rogan? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
Good. Now, you crossed that line with the Twitter files.
No.
Elon Musk,
Well, and the reason he says no is because of what we were just saying, right? It all depends. How do you view Elon in his role as CEO?
Well,
is he a whistleblower or does he represent the institutional power that the Democrats want to claim he does? Because they claim that Twitter is unfair to them and lets the Republicans run wild, right? All right, here we go.
my time. Please do not interrupt me. I love
Elon this whole,
Musk
the whole
spoon-fed-
format of this is so fucked.
Well,
The whole
it's
format
like
is for
being
them
on
to
trial.
grandstand.
They conduct it like a trial.
Yeah, but
where
it's even-
the prosecutors never want you to go off the very direct, narrow parameters of their questions. And if you try, they'll start yelling and talking.
Yeah,
over you
reclaiming
like
my
that.
time. Right.
Yeah.
It's all for them to grandstand and get their digs in. I mean,
Right.
that's what this
Right.
is. This isn't really about him being there.
Elon Musk spoon-fed you his cherry-picked information, which you must have suspected promotes a slanted viewpoint, or at the very least generates another right-wing conspiracy theory. You violated your own standard, and you appear to have benefited from it. Before the release...
Okay, first of all, before we get to the how he benefited from it, the whole idea of conspiracy theory. I mean, you have every Twitter files drop contains mountains of evidence to go with every claim that they make.
Right.
These are the people who insist that the reason they are censoring is not to police speech, but is to protect against a nefarious foreign threat, which they have not really been able to produce any evidence for in any great quantity. So who are the conspiracy theorists here?
Well, you know who her number one donor is? Israel lobby.
Yeah.
So if you really want to go looking for foreign influence in American elections, you should probably look in that direction. But that's a direction that she's uniquely disinclined to look in. In fact, I believe it was the 2016 election, where some very direct evidence came out about Israeli interference in the election. And really. And there
No,
were
I'm
some
laughing at Barron. He says, please change this image. Doesn't like the screenshot phones the way it is. All right. We're going to get back to this in a second. I'll honor
we
your
can't
request.
blame it. But this is what they've been doing since the DNC leaks. If they have been trying to condition their brain dead followers to accept the premise that the source of information can discredit information even if it's true.
Exactly.
That's really the argument that she's making. It came from Elon Musk, so she's not arguing that it's not true.
It's the same as Matt Binder going after Elon Musk for the Jacob Chansley thing. Like, it's all of a piece. These people do not state their actual intentions, their actual positions, right?
Right.
All right.
Well, because they're indefensible based
Of
on
course.
their own purported values.
We're going to see Jamie Raskin next, and that's a even clearer example than this. But here we go. Let's let this finish first.
Emails in August of last year, you had 661,000 Twitter followers. After the Twitter files, your followers doubled, and now it's 3 times what it was last August. I imagine your Substack readership, which is a subscription, increased significantly because of the work that you did for Elon Musk. Now, I'm not asking you to put a dollar figure on it, but it's quite obvious that you've profited from the Twitter files. You hit the jackpot on that Vegas slot machine to which you referred. That's true, isn't it?
I've also reinvested.
You've made some. No. Is it true that you have profited since you were the recipient of the Twitter files? You've made money. Yes or no?
I think it's probably a wash, honestly.
No, you have made money that you did not have before, correct?
But I've also spent money that I didn't have before. I just hired a whole group of people to
Patently
investigate.
obvious answer, reclaiming my time.
Okay, see, this is where I actually have some constructive criticism for Matt Taibbi because he is way, way, way too nice in these situations.
That's
in
what I'm
debates
saying.
in general.
I would wind up in contempt of Congress.
Way too nice in these situations.
Like, I want to jump through the screen watching her.
I mean, it's incredible. Did you profit off of this? Now, he feels a need to say, well, I kind of broke even because I spent money hiring a team. The point is, my answer, if I'm asked that, is, hey, I'm a professional journalist. I do this for a living. I'm compensated for my work. So, yes, I did profit off of it to an extent. And to what extent I did is none of your business, you raisin-faced, snake-haired, Medusa-looking stooge. That's what I would have told her. That's what I would have told her. Because it's not relevant.
And you know what? At that point, you'd have a better shot at the presidency than Marianne Williamson.
Yeah, right, exactly. Because look, you don't ask a surgeon before you go under for surgery, hey, wait a minute, doctor, are you profiting off of this operation? He would look at you like you grew a second head. He'd be, well, yes, I'm a doctor. This is my job. I do this for a living. Yes, I get paid for this. Yes, in that sense, I'm profiting off of the operation. This is what I do. What should Elon Musk have given the Twitter files emails to what? A basketball player who was willing to do it for free?
Right.
So there was no conflict. Like, what are you saying? He gave it to a professional journalist so that it was in good hands. And the professional journalist has gained a big following, as he deserves to have gained a big following. It was a great piece of work. So, like, what is your point? What is your point? Oh, did you make money off of this?
Well, so much of this, their absolute hatred of Joe Rogan, their hatred of Matt Taibbi. You know what? Joe Rogan has the #1 podcast in the country. And I believe even before the Twitter files, Matt Taibbi was the most successful journalist on Substack. So if, as she says, and I have no cause to doubt it, his subscribers have tripled, he's way out ahead now of any journalist on Substack. This drives them crazy because whenever people are able to vote with their purchases, with their feet, you can see how hated these elites and their narratives are, because anyone who can effectively offer a counter narrative becomes wildly popular. And when you look at the people who peddle their narratives, like CNN, MSNBC, well, they got 20 people who watch that shit.
Right. Exactly. All right, that's the end of that. We don't have to. We don't have to play the rest. That's just her mouthing off about the fact that he got paid to do or made money off of this somehow impugns
How dare he?
his integrity. Yeah. Right. I mean,
well, and also as she kept cutting off, he had to hire. These are tens of thousands of emails. He can't read all that shit. He had to hire a staff. So that's the point he was trying to make. Whatever money I'm making, I have to hire all these people to continue to cover this story.
Right. Exactly. Of course. All right, let's go back and catch some super chats. While the super chat's running, by the way, folks, we are going to shout out our patrons. If you can sign up at patreon.com/DoDissidents, it really helps us out. It helps us create as much content as we can. I'm going to put our patron scroll up here. So we want to thank everybody who has signed up at Patreon. You could also go to DoDissidents.substack.com. But we want to do a like check. Like, check. We got a big crowd in here. Please like the stream and please subscribe to this channel if you have not subscribed already. That is very important. We also have platforms on Rumble and Rockfin. We encourage you to go subscribe over there. One of the projects we are going to get going pretty soon is we will have the occasional Rumble exclusive live stream where we can talk about things that upper management will not permit us to talk about here. So make sure you find us, follow us wherever you can. Twitter @DoDissidents. YouTube, Rumble, we're on Facebook too. Don't use Facebook as much as I used to. It's not as fun. Now that I'm getting to learn Twitter, I could see how people get addicted to it because it's very fast paced. And
That's
it
why
is
I've
scary.
been staying away from it.
It's scary because it does. And I look, we
I
only have
don't
like
like
3,000
it.
followers. We're pretty new to it, but I could tell how people get hooked on it and how it drives people crazy. Like I could tell, like there were like every once in a while, we would hear like Greenwald make an argument that we kind of, because we're both big fans of his, but every once in a while he'd do something where we'd be like, oh, come on, man. Like this, you're just kind of trolling now. Like, what are you picking this fight for? You're getting a little carried away.
You're just owning the libs now.
Exactly. But now that I'm getting used to checking Twitter, I can see how you can fall into that very, very easily. Because if you are inundated with people coming at you, talking shit to you every second of every day, you get into that mode where you want to do it back. So, now that I've learned the ropes
that's
a little
exactly
bit,
why I've kind of kept a distance from it. 'Cause I don't, you know what I'm like. I'm like a fucking pit bull, man. Like, it's not going to be good for me to be getting people like poking me in the forehead like that all day.
Of course, right. Because the thing is, if you do it on Facebook, like you argue on Facebook, only your friends can really see it. But you do it on Twitter, everybody can see it. And so before you know it, you're in a real
you
rugby
got the world.
squad. Yeah, right, exactly. Everybody's piling on. But thank you guys very much.
I was voted in my high school yearbook most likely to be canceled while on a plane.
All right, let's knock a couple of these out, and then we have one more segment. And then we got to let you guys get to your Oscar parties, right? Haha. LMS Sadler, $4.99 super sticker. Thank you so much for that. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. You also said she looks like Medusa. Now, I promise you I didn't steal that from you because I know I cracked the Medusa joke. If you check the record, I called her Medusa in the past before. But she does.
Yeah.
That's why people make
she
that
does.
joke. She does. She absolutely does. Yeah.
Debbie Wasserman schmuck. Get it trending. Get it trending.
Exactly. Virtuoso, every time she talks, she hisses like a snake. Yeah, no, she looks like she has snakes in the hair, absolutely. And even the facial expression is the way we usually see that rendered. Christian, thank you for the $5. Asking if Matt made money during a certain time frame, what's he going to do? Choose poverty and homelessness for integrity purposes? Look, it's a ridiculous question. Like, people who do things well are generally people who have made that their profession, and so they get paid to do it. Like, it's not an own on them.
It's a prosecutor tactic. Did you get paid for your testimony here today, doctor? That's what you kept seeing again and again. And, as I said when we talked about this the other day, it was just topsy-turvy land because, you were really in the position of watching Jim Jordan defending the prerogatives of journalists and the First Amendment.
Yeah.
And the Democrats were like Nixon era White House attorneys.
Well, that's what's the amazing thing about this is it wasn't just that the Democrats were horrible. It's that the Republicans were actually good. Like, most of the time you say, yeah, the Democrats suck. The Republicans also suck, but in a different way. No, this time it was actually like everything the Republicans were saying
not a lot.
was spot on. They called out, what's her name? Plaskett, whatever the chief Democrat was, when she kept asking him who give you the emails. Jordan actually butted in. Are you asking a journalist to reveal his sources?
Right.
Like, they were actually on it.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it was great. And he talked about how they had hearings the week before where there was a, very left-wing witness, and he wanted that person's right to speak protected as well. We'll get into this in the next segment, but it's just, that's the kind of thing where I might write an article for us explaining to Blue MAGA, like, okay, well, these are the reasons that you're gradually pushing people into voting Republican who might never have thought about it before. That would be an interesting 10 points. And this is definitely one of them. Because if you really believe in freedom of speech, if you deeply are committed to the First Amendment, who the fuck are you supposed to vote for? The Democrats?
Right. No, of course. Of course. Well, yeah, this is what we're going to get into next. So for our final segment of the evening, and by the way, folks, please hit that subscribe button if you are here for the first time and you like what you're seeing, and please hit that like button to help us get some more people in here. We're almost done. Last segment of the evening. Thank you guys for sticking around on this Sunday afternoon. Great crowd for a matinee. Really good crowd for a matinee.
Yeah.
In
This is
January.
like Buster Keaton shit, man.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. All right, here we go. In January, a bill was proposed entitled the Protecting Speech from Government Interference Act. Now, the bill is designed to prohibit federal employees from censoring speech. Now, this is from congress.gov. This is the sort of text on the official government site describing the bill. Specifically, the bill prohibits employees of executive agencies who are otherwise in the competitive service from, number one, using their official authority, to influence or advocate for a third party, including a private entity, to censor speech. So as you can see, that's basically lifted from the Twitter Files finding right there. Prohibits you to pressure a third party, influence or advocate a third party, including a private entity, to censor speech. In other words, breaking that bond between the corporate state and the state itself. 2, censoring the speech of any person who has a pending regulatory application with or is the subject of or a participant in an active enforcement action by the employee's office, or engaging in censorship while on duty, wearing a uniform, etc. Now, certain presidential appointees may not censor speech at any time, including outside normal duty hours. So as you can see there, right from the text, very, very clear. This was clearly in response to the Twitter Files revelations, specifically that first dump, where they leaned on the social media companies to spike the Hunter Biden laptop. Right? They wanted to pass a bill so that that could not happen again. Seems like a good idea to me, right-winger that I am. Okay? Now, this week, Congressman Jamie Raskin took to the floor of the House to express his disapproval of the bill, giving it an all-too-predictable nickname. Let's hear what he's got to say.
Agnostic about, well, the truth and lies. Who knows what really happened? Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? Well, they've got a perfect bill for you then. We call it the Putin Protection Act.
Of course.
That's what it is. The Putin Protection Act. Distinguished gentleman from New York explained Putin spent millions of dollars in 2016 to pump propaganda, electoral sabotage into our political system. He did.
Still running with that 7 years later. Still running with it. By the way, I thought it was $100,000 worth of Facebook ads, not millions.
I thought they all respect Nate Silver. Right. Even Nate Silver came out and said, "Yeah, did that amount of ads in a multi-billion-dollar election affect the outcome? No, it didn't." So, but you know, why? If they didn't blame everything on Russia, they'd actually have to make rational arguments.
Right. It's just, I mean, this.
If they didn't have Russia, they'd have to invent it, which they more or less do in terms of how they frame it.
The agency in the country told us that. We got a bipartisan report from the Senate saying it. They're agnostic about it. When it comes to Putin, they see no evil, they hear no evil, none of it. No, but we know that it happened, okay? That's Putin's plan. Why? Putin cannot beat America politically.
Oh, no?
He can't beat us economically.
Oh, no?
He can't beat us militarily.
Really?
Putin can't beat us philosophically. There's one thing he's got: the internet.
Think of the idiocy of that statement right there. Think of the absolute stupidity of that. He can't beat us politically or philosophically, but he can beat us on the internet. Well, what do you think he's doing on the internet, jackass? He's spreading political and philosophical messages. So
like
obviously,
it doesn't even make it doesn't even make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. And look, we have not. I'm very, very proud that we have not gotten into any of the Marianne 2024 stuff on this show. We're staying away from that. But these are opportunities like this are important to make the point against Democratic primary politics, because once again, people who vote in Democratic primaries love what J.B. Raskin is saying. That's what you're dealing with. There is no way to get a majority of people who take this in as wisdom and truth. There is no way to get a majority of those people to vote the way you want them to if you're on the left. Zero. Not happening.
And that's why we've spoken out so much against it, because it's hard to believe. Look, I don't want to keep beating up on them. The Vanguard guys might actually be stupid enough to believe this. I don't believe that Crystal and Kyle are dumb enough to be in that for anything other than to build their subscribers. There's no way they're stupid enough not to understand what you're saying right now, that there is no path for Marianne Williamson in a Democratic primary. There's no way they don't get that.
All right, let's keep going here.
Why? Because we're a wide open country. And so he says, let's take advantage of it. Let's go on their social media platform. We'll put people who oppose Putin on the internet in jail, which they do. If you send a tweet,
or as MSNBC
against
would say,
Putin,
non-responsive.
you're going to jail. You put out a tweet against his filthy imperialist war, which some of them support in Ukraine. If you put out a tweet against that in Russia, you're going to jail. But he says, let's take advantage of America's openness. We'll take advantage of them, and we're going to put out propaganda. We'll lie about when the election is. We'll say it's on Thursday.
We're taking advantage of America's free speech. Therefore, we have to restrict our free speech so that it's not taken advantage of by foreign actors.
Also, whenever you have an American representative standing up there talking about imperialist wars.
Well,
and,
yeah, that's a joke.
Come on, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's a joke. That's a whole other thing. But yes,
we never do that.
Yeah, right. No, exactly.
Thursday, when it's on Tuesday. We'll tell people to go vote next week, whatever. And that's the genesis of this whole thing. We have our security agencies who alert social media, and they say they're putting up fraudulent information on your platform. And now they come forward and they say the Democrats are trying to, what? Tell the truth. Not Democrats, the government.
Oh, good catch there, a few seconds too late. The Democrats, I mean the government, are now trying to tell the truth. What he's saying here has been demonstrably proven false.
That's what's amazing, that he's even saying it.
It's amazing.
I mean, the Twitter files have shown that this was all bullshit.
Yeah, here.
That they weren't uncovering foreign actors.
Exactly.
That they were going after people for having political opinions that the establishment might not like.
Exactly.
Our paid federal government agencies are trying to tell the social media when foreign malign actors like Russia and China and Iran are trying to interfere in our elections. That's what this is about. Putin.
No, it's not. Okay, as Russell just said, I wanted to give him a chance to say that before we sort of talk about this further. The Hamilton 68 Twitter files drop proved conclusively that thousands of accounts were either shadow banned, suspended, or shut down altogether because the execs at Twitter, under influence and advocacy, whatever the text of the bill is here, from the states, shut them down out of suspicion that they were foreign actors, but they weren't, right?
Right.
So, that proved that beyond any doubt that this was not about policing foreign activity on our platform. Notice that. So much for the tech revolution, right? Creating this truly globalized and democratized method of communication. No, now that our people were convinced to vote a certain way, now it's ours. Now this is our platform. Why are the Russians on our platform? Right? That aside, what he's saying, once again, has been proven false. Thousands of people shut down for suspicious activity, meaning, are these foreign actors? We read through the whole thing. We did a whole episode on that exact drop. Nonsense. It's just proven, like what he's saying here is debunked nonsense.
It doesn't matter because the crowd that they're playing to, they're not in. They haven't even read the Twitter files because they were told not to read them
because
by
of this.
Their leaders.
Exactly.
This is Elon Musk cherry picking and right wing journalist Matt Taibbi just being a laptop. They're not even reading it. They're just getting the secondhand orders of how to understand the Twitter files. They haven't sat down and read the Twitter files.
No, they're taking it from guys like him. No, they're taking it from guys like him. Exactly.
Protection Act. They want Putin and Xi to run free over our platforms, and then they want to fine federal government employees thousands of dollars if they alert our government to what foreign malign actors are doing. And the whole justification for it is their silly obsession with Hunter Biden's laptop and this New York Post story, which was taken down by Twitter for one day, 3 weeks before the election, as an exercise of their private decision-making. Then Elon Musk buys Twitter, and he fires 6 journalists because they disagree with him. They've got no problem with that.
Okay, first, all right. I don't remember if that's true or not, if it was only down for one day. I thought it was more than one day. But when it came back with a warning. So that drastically reduced its reach. It came back with, on Facebook, sometimes you see, this has been flagged for this and this and this. Yeah, exactly. All right, that's about it. That's all we need to see from this guy. But yeah, that's what you're dealing with once again, hiding the ball with what they actually think. That's the theme of this afternoon's show, everybody, is that these people, these fascists, these pro-war, pro-incarceration, and pro-censorship fascists, not libs anymore, no, the blue MAGA fascists, because they pose as liberals, they will not come out and say what they actually think. None of these people actually come out and say, we want more censorship. 4 words. That's all they have to say. That's what they actually think. All this grandstanding, all the hearings, all the questions, all the gotcha moments, and all the owns that all the MSNBC addicts tweet about, is none of them actually contain the crystallized opinion of their champions, of their heroes, which is, we want more censorship. Or let them rot in jail. Fuck that. Like, it's all, like, these are very basic, emotionally charged opinions that they have in order to enforce their own worldview that they cannot just admit outright because, unlike the Trumpers, who are just very, very comfortable in their own skin about what they feel, they have to reconcile these truly fascistic tendencies with their masquerade as good, caring, decent liberals committed to this higher democratic ideal. They're obviously not. They are obviously not. This is red fascism versus blue fascism. That's what's on the menu.
Well, it's rainbow fascism. It's the rainbow fascism. And that's why they need identity politics. That is why they elevate postmodern theory, because you can argue about it forever. It's perfect for them because it's not aimed at any kind of reconciliation. It rejects the very idea of reconciliation, or advancement. Right? It's all against all.
Right?
God, you can spend forever in this granular intersectional web of privileges. You can fight about that forever. It's perfect. While you're fighting about that, they're grabbing the sacks of money, throwing them on the horse, and riding off over the sunset. Right. If they had to actually speak on principles, on governing philosophy, they'd be dead. What would they talk about? What would they say? Because they cannot justify what their actions demonstrate they believe in. Censorship, cruel and unusual punishment, hiding information from the public.
Right.
That's what they really believe in. That's what their actions tell you they believe in, but they can't get up there and say that. And as you say, the Republicans are actually ideological. So they can say what they believe in. And you dig it or you don't dig it. I always say that the advantage Republicans have long had is if you like what they're about, they're giving it to you.
Right. Right.
What is the appeal of the Democrats? The appeal of the Democrats is only to PMCs and people who are so terrified of what the Republicans might do with power that they feel like they have no choice but to vote for the Democrats. So the poorest of the poor and the very privileged.
Right. Exactly. Fancy Pants $4.99. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Cool Blue. Prior to Elon, Twitter bots were the Democrats' jobs plan. Yeah, exactly. And not just on the user side, but on the enforcement side. This is what we've talked about. I've talked about this a lot as a gig worker who's dealt with these tech companies most of the last 6-7 years of my life on a pretty much day-to-day basis. Yeah, they wanted things as they were. They wanted enforcement via AI robot that basically sniffed out certain people who used certain words and phrases that they didn't like, with no responsibility for any human being to actually make those calls. It's absolutely what they wanted. Meteor Dreams, thanks for the $1.99. People still listen to Sam Cedar. He's a bore. Yeah, that channel is rather boring. I'm assuming you were reminded of him when we did the Matt Binder segment.
It's awful, but this is what I don't get. Because if you look in the chat, when they cover things like the congressional hearings, they're all on the side of Debbie Wasserman Schmuck.
Exactly.
If you think like that, what are you doing on YouTube getting your news from Emma Vigeland? Why don't you just watch CNN? They have money.
Right. Exactly.
They have
right.
remote reporting. Like,
Right.
What are you doing here? What
No,
are you doing on YouTube?
It's amazing. And look, like I said, we talk about a lot of times here on the show, a willingness to step outside your comfort zone and give people credit where it's due, even if you disagree with them on many things, right? So the act of taking her side in and of itself, we couldn't automatically strike you for that because we'd be hypocrites, because there are people who we don't agree with on a lot of things who, when they get something right, will say, okay, credit where credit's due. She didn't get anything right there. She didn't make an actual point there. All she did was smear him with, these sort of I won't even say innuendos, because it's not an innuendo. Yeah, he made some money off the Twitter files. So it's a non-statement. It was just character assassination. That's the phrase I was looking for there. That's all that was. She didn't actually make an actual point. So, I mean, the idea that what? She owned him. She owned him because you guys don't accept that Elon Musk is acting as a whistleblower in this moment. That's why you think she owned him, because you can't connect.
I just don't understand where these fucking mutants are coming from. Like, this whole ecosystem was born of a movement that rejected the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party establishment, and the corporate media. So how do you find your way to being somebody who's siding with the woman who, by the way, got fired from leading the DNC for rigging the primaries against Bernie Sanders? How do you wind up in a place where you're siding with this person against Matt Taibbi on the subject of the First Amendment and freedom of speech? I don't get it. I don't get, how do you get there? Amazing,
As that guy, what's that guy's name? Jesse Lee Peterson, the right-wing guy. That's his catchphrase. Amazing. Yeah. Oh, he's funny. We should cover him. He's a trip. He's this really weird guy. He'll argue with somebody. And he was debating David Pakman on something. And every time David Pakman would make a point, he wouldn't respond to this point. He'd just take a beat. Amazing. And then move on. And eventually David Pakman would say, stop it, man. You can't just say amazing every time I make a point. You actually have to argue with me. I'm here to debate you. Yeah, that guy's funny. Amazing. That should be actually a sound drop. We should add that. Oh, this wasn't a super chat, but I wanted to respond. Cricket, I like your tweet comparing someone to microwave toothpaste. Yeah, that's the Surfs guy. He's the guy I described as the inside of a toothpaste tube that time. He looks looks like radioactive toothpaste, that guy. Thanks for the compliment. Your mother was a hamster. I hate the Blue MAGA name. They don't give a shit about making America great. Thanks for the $5. Yeah, well, you're a MAGA guy, so I understand how that might be a bit insulting to you. And for an extra $95, we might consider changing it. So, yeah,
we'll come up with something.
If the price is right. But thank you. Cool Blue $4.99. Democrats rig primaries are McCarthyites, anti-choice, forced V's, and oppose free speech. Perhaps the sheepdogs for Marianne support that. I don't. I was talking to Russell offline about this earlier, and we'll have more to say on this, I guess, in the coming months as the election draws nearer. But the war, the incarceration, I mean, look what they're doing this week. Look what the Democrats, look at the messaging they have forwarded this week. The messaging this week from the Democratic Party is more money for World War III, jail time for mentally ill, diagnosed, transient schizophrenics, and more censorship online. Like, this is their platform as it's actually manifesting in real world ideas. And all of the supposed good stances they have are simply theoretical, right? We're pro-choice.
Well, if they're
did
gonna
you
start
do
World
anything
War
to
III,
protect
they gotta
choice
make
over the
sure
last
you don't
50
hear
years?
about
No.
it.
What's that?
Well, if they're going to start World War III, they got to make sure you don't hear about it if they're in the middle of a campaign.
Exactly.
All right, they
Exactly.
don't want you hearing about that. Yeah, well, that's another thing. You know, I was traveling with some people who were very in the lib bubble, but they weren't American. But that infection spreads far beyond our shores. And yeah, man, like just saying to them, yeah, well, you know, Obama actually said when they asked him if he was going to codify this after he had promised he was going to codify Roe, that he had other priorities. They didn't even know what to do with that. Like, you could
exactly.
see they had never even dealt with that kind of information. That's how libs are. It's like, it does not compute, right? This is Saint Obama. This is Saint Obama. How could he be responsible for the Supreme Court striking down abortion? But he is. I mean, along with many other people, you know, not just him, but the party as a whole has been fundraising off of this issue. They didn't want it resolved, and they fucked around until finally it got stricken down. And now they're such scumbags. They're fundraising off it again. What did they do? That's what they did. They had the emails out that day to get money out of you.
Of course. Name of the game. Tusker, thanks, guys. Great show. I'm assuming you were probably working, Tusker, because we're starting early today. But for those of you who filed in late, this will be obviously available to stream in its entirety as soon as it ends. Thank you, Tusker. Appreciate that, as always.
Tusker.
Cool Blue. Thanks for the $4.99 again, my friend. The Majority Report should be retitled The Talking Dead. Yeah, it is quite boring. This was just one I appreciated since we dropped the Walter Sobchak Big Lebowski sound drop a couple times today. Lots of ins and outs. That's right. Complicated case, Maud. A lot of ins, a lot of outs. All right. Is that everything we got for today? Are we wrapped?
I think so. I think we are met. That is a wrap. Well, everybody. Oh, yeah. You want to give everybody a... That'll be my new close. We'll try that.
Yeah, there we go. Excellent. Oh, Patrick Donahue in with the $10. Before
no, that's
buzzer.
10 euros.
10 euros, sorry.
By the time we're done with this SVB thing, that'll be worth $100.
Yeah, exactly. 10 quid, as they say.
10 quid.
Loved the show in Ireland. Damn, loved your takedown of the Vanguard. I unsubscribed and love your destruction of those two idiots. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Glad
Thank
to
you.
keep you to keep you happy. It was funny, man. When we first did we first tackled their Aaron Mate interview way back when, I watched this other video of these other guys. They call themselves Spar and Brawl. I think they changed the title of their show.
I know who you're talking about.
I think they changed the title of their show since then. They're not called that anymore. It's like A Progressive World now or something it is. But they described a similar thing because they made a Vanguard response video to that Aaron Mate thing, and they got a ton of viewers. And those guys are funny. I like their sense of humor. They're like, man, we had no idea how much people hated them. Like, we did not expect to get that many people watching. But we really
they may be the most despised people in this space.
Yeah, and who knew?
They really might be.
Who
Even
knew?
when we do
Yeah.
TYT, we don't get that kind of.
No. I mean, I love how, because there were a couple of people I noticed in the chat last time calling them psyops, and I don't use the word psyops very often because that involves, like, you know, they're being paid by the intelligence agencies. I'm like, those two guys would be psyops in, like, the Burn After Reading movie. Like in the Coen Brothers version of the intelligence community, those are the guys that they would hire. Yeah, exactly, to spread their propaganda. So no, I don't think they're psyops. Tyler Johnson, cheers, guys. Great as always. Well, thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it. See, now our normal now a lot of our 7 p.m. viewers are getting home and tuning in. So
up now, yeah.
showing up now. So, but
They
this will be available.
They got cheated.
They got cheated. We apologize. But, on the bright side, as Arpoon stated earlier, I think at the very top of the show, he's in the UK. He can now watch a 4 p.m. show without having to stay up till 4 in the morning. Jack from Ireland is actually tuning in. We have actually quite
a 6-hour difference, so it's about 10 o'clock there now.
Well, now it's later.
Or it was
now
when
it's like
we
11:30.
started,
Yeah, like 9 or 10 or something like that. Well, now it's daylight saving, so it's probably a little different. I don't know how it works. But now they're able to watch it. So, yeah, no, it's great because we actually do have a decent amount of viewers on that side of the pond there. According to YouTube, like 20% of the audience is in Europe, which is kind of high. I think it's very high, yeah, maybe we'll do a European tour one day. I'll get to see Paris.
We look a little unwashed. We're probably popular in France.
Right, exactly. Cool Blue, thanks for the 199 again. Any Siskel and Ebert like Oscar picks? Well, we were talking about this a little bit at the top. I did not enjoy what I watched of Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's the favorite to win tonight. I love The Banshees of Inisherin. That's my movie of the year. I'm hoping that wins something. I would love to see Martin McDonagh, one of my favorite writers, as a theater guy because he's written for the stage as much as he has, in fact, more than he has for the screen. I'd like to see him win a screenplay Oscar. And it really would be a travesty if they give it to that Everything Everywhere movie over his, because that was an exquisitely written movie. That's the only thing I really care about. Other than that, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm just gonna be drinking the whole time.
This isn't a super chat, but I'm thinking about literally writing an article about this. All right, so The Last of Us. Oh God, I really want to write about this. Okay, so if you're on social media, you might have seen all of these people defending The Last of Us from homophobia. But what's really interesting about it is apparently you don't really need any homophobic backlash to defend a show against homophobic backlash. Because The Last of Us was done well, you really didn't have any backlash. But that is, the kind of person who really likes to virtue signal, that's not a reason not to virtue signal. So you had all these people coming out. It was the third episode, did a whole backstory with a gay romance. It was very beautifully done, very well written, very well acted. And because it was done well, there was no backlash. But they just couldn't process that. Like that, they were so disappointed by there not being a backlash. They just behaved as if there was. So they're writing these long, that love is love, and that episode was great, and the haters could go. What haters? What haters, man? There were no haters. They were not there.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything about that. Maybe I'll watch that show.
No, it was very good. I mean, it just confirmed what I keep saying. Like, you have a lot of hacky writers who use that as an excuse when they write shitty work.
Right.
But you have a whole audience that just loves to virtue signal their alliance to woke ideology. So, having this gay romance in a zombie show and not having a backlash, they just pretended there was just so they could virtue signal off of it. It was a really interesting sociological phenomenon. Like it was interesting enough that I want to write an article about it.
Interesting. All right. Well, maybe we should watch that for the film club when the whole series is out. That'd be interesting. That'd be something.
Yeah. What are they? 1 or 2 episodes left?
Yeah,
it's almost done. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna do the Indian cinema this week, and then then maybe we could do that the week after or 2 weeks, because I guess they release an episode at a time, right? HBO drips them out, so it'd have to be maybe 3 weeks.
Yep.
Alrighty, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. We had a wonderful crowd in here today. Thank you for accommodating me on the time slot switch. Should be having a couple of friends arriving pretty shortly, so we'll wrap this up now. But thank you guys very much. Patreon.com/Do Dissidents to support the show if you can. Thank you so much. Go to dodissidents.substack.com. Sign up there. You can sign up for free at Substack. That's very important. Helps you stay in touch with us. Twitter @DoDissidents. Now I'm getting the hang of it. So now now I insult people on there all day. So you want to now there's a show to see over there. So go ahead.
You got to retweet my tweet. I actually went to the trouble of retweeting Matt Orfalea's thing with a little comment, with a little commentary.
Oh, okay, interesting. Interesting. I will. I didn't know that. All right. I'll look into that. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Russell, get that singing bowl out so we can give everybody a proper sign-off here. We will see you guys back here on Thursday. I'm going to be in Albany for the next few days, but I will be back in time for the show on Thursday, so there will definitely be a show Thursday night, 8 p.m. Thank you very much. In the meantime, be safe, be well.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Please clap.